Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. However you happen to be watching and or listening to this, I want to welcome you to the latest episode of the Gaming Circle podcast. The podcast where, yes, this week we are missing our illustrious co-host, Mr. Everborn Saga. Where is Mr. Everborn Saga? Let me put this up on the screen right from jump, just so you understand where he is. He is right now at the Golden State Comic Fest. The Winter Fest is what they're called. He'll be there on the 25th and the 26th. If you happen to be in New Jersey, go check your boy out. He's right now on display. He is selling his wares. Hopefully he's watching GCP. Shout out to you, good sir. But I am here, keeping the show alive. Got to keep the show moving, and we have a great guest. But before he joins us, let me introduce our co-host for the week. This man has been on this show many a times. We appreciate when he's able to join us. He always advocates that you not follow him, that you not try and find him. He is the elusive one, Mr. Lucius Augustus. Good evening. Oh, good morning, sir. Where am I? How you doing this morning?
This guy thought he was in the Discord for a second.
For a moment, yeah. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I'm doing well. Good morning, everyone. I hope that the winter storm is treating you well. I see that some friends in New Orleans got 10 inches of snow, which is crazy for you to see that much snow happening in places in the South. So everybody stay safe.
Even in my Florida here, we were in jackets. We're completely bundled up. It is cold here, unusually so. I would actually not have been surprised if we would have had snow in the last, I don't know, week or so. It's been unusually bad, but
yeah,
we're doing
like
our best, you know.
In my college town, Pensacola, Florida, there's a bunch of beaches there, and they were covered in snow. And Pensacola is kind of Panhandle, Florida, top left. That's lower Alabama practically, but yeah, that place got snow, so it was indeed one of the few places in Florida that got snow. But when Florida's getting snow, that's when you know climate change is real, people. That thing is real.
We're gonna try to do what we do, but at the end of the day, of course, we're gamers here, so when it's cold out there, we bundle up, we stay inside, we grab a controller, and we good to go. Shout out to all the great people that are already in the chat. Some folks already know what's gonna go down today. Abacab Abdel 114 already knows your it seems that your reputation precedes you. You spoiled Ninja Gaiden 2 weeks in advance. Interesting. I guess we're here with Negro Damas today. All right, that kufi fits. All right, it should be interesting today. All right, cool. Just so you guys know, we will have the Fox join us. He's in the middle of work and stuff like that, but he will jump in when he can. We told him to jump in whenever he has an opportunity to. So we'll just go ahead and get started. And once he's able to join us, we'll obviously introduce it and get him in here as well. We're hoping, and I say this because the Everborn Bloviator is not with us today, so we're hoping for 2.5 hours. Just knocked on some particle board. We'll see how far we get with that. Might get longer, might get shorter. We shall see. But let us start this thing like we always do. And thanks to all the great folks that are already in here, already in the chat. I see our numbers are growing in all the various platforms that we always frequent. So thank you guys for being here. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Consider being a subscriber if you are not a subscriber. We love all our members here. Shout out to all the great members. You know, we always be in the Discord talking them things. So if you're a part of our Discord, you know what's up. If you're not, hit the link of the Discord when this show posts, because you should be part of our Discord. We have a lot of great conversations there. But Lucius, man, let's start with you. What have you been playing this week, 2025? I guess this is when we starting the year. What's been keeping you busy, sir?
I have been going through the backlog, making sure that I finished certain games before other games came out. So in the past couple weeks, I've been going through
I apologize. I don't mean to cut you, but I need to do it because he's here, and I need to give him his flowers. Salute to the birthday boy, the great John Wolf. What's going on? How you doing, John? Happy birthday, sir. Everybody in the chat, give that man a happy birthday. It is his birthday today. Salute to the great John Wolf. Shout out to you. Go ahead, Mr. Lucius. What were you talking
Speaking of John Wolf, he's the reason why I was playing these games in the first place, because he was talking so high and mighty about the Mafia series, and I was just like, you know what, I haven't played that since all those games originally came out, and I never really played the remasters, despite owning it on both Xbox and PC. I just never jumped in. So I played Mafia 1, Mafia 2, and Mafia 3. And great experiences. I was a good way through LA Noire before I switched to Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, and then to be able to kind of finish it off, I'm now playing Rebirth, since Rebirth just came out like a day or two ago. So that's where I've been for the past few weeks. I've been burning through as much of my backlog as possible, making sure that like I finish some of these games, so that way when Mafia Old Country comes out, I already have all the background knowledge necessary to understand all those references. And I had to beat Remake because I hadn't beaten it since the original one came out for the PS4. So I never played Intergrade, like the intermission part with Yuffie.
Yep.
So I was just all right, let me just finish this. Now I'm playing Rebirth. And that's probably
how is Rebirth? Speak to me about Rebirth. I've played Intergrade, I've played Remake, I've played it on PC, and I've played it on PS4. No, PS5. I played it on. All right, I have beaten the PS5 version, haven't beaten it on PC just yet. I've been sipping it for a long time now. I really do want to play Rebirth, but I haven't gotten Remake completely finished yet. Shout out to the man MJ Dark calling it Reblur.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts of Rebirth?
Yeah, I think that in the same way that the Mafia trilogy, the first two games were very linear, and the third game was the one that was truly an open world game where you had to spend a lot of time moving back and forth. And because of that, there was some issues that I personally had, because there was time in between that I was just driving essentially to my next destination, and it wasn't the most fun thing the entire time. I kind of feel the same way for Rebirth, because Remake, as much as I complain about how there were some slow moments in Remake, Rebirth doesn't have those super slow moments, but it just has a really big world. So if you're the sort of person who can and will find themselves doing everything on a map just because you can, this will
be a problem for you?
Yes, it's going to be a problem for me. I expect that Rebirth is going to take me a long time to beat it, because the type of player that I am is that in open world games, I like to kind of touch everything to get a good understanding of it. So I won't be able to give you my full feelings about the game. But I will say, if I have become more interested in the story that they are telling in Remake and Rebirth only a few years after, right? Because like when Remake first came out, I actually was pretty pissed, because they used the word remake to be able to do like a hint, nudge, nudge. This is not actually the first game. This is us redoing kind of the storyline in some capacity.
It's almost like a reimagining, not really a remake.
Right? And by one, it's just like, if you haven't played the first Final Fantasy VII, there's a lot of stuff that you're missing out on. There's a lot of stuff that you're missing out on. And you're missing out on that stuff because there's so much. Final Fantasy VII at this point is just such a deep world, because they had the first game, they had Dirge of Cerberus, they had Crisis Core, they had Ever Crisis. All of these things give you more story to be able to understand why the world of Final Fantasy VII is the way that it is. And if you're just walking into Final Fantasy VII Remake and you haven't played any of those other games, it'll still be a good experience, I'm pretty sure. But I just feel like for a vast majority of people, they're just not going to get a lot of the stuff that's happening. And there's a lot of, multi-dimensional kind of timey-wimey bullcrap that they've done in Remake that was not there in the original games. So it's very Kingdom Hearts like, where the story gets convoluted and there are multiple versions of the same person living different lives inside of different space-time realities, and you're just like, oh, I'm pretty sure they're gonna like merge these realities at some point. Like as we can see right here, Zack, a main character in Crisis Core, is alive inside of this game, but he's not alive in the same dimension.
We're not gonna ever one Saga the story now.
You are literally showing it to them, right? You are literally showing it to them.
But they have no basis of understanding of what they're seeing. Don't ever one Saga.
If anything, I am Everborn Sagaing the last game.
The last game. That's right.
The game that was here for a while. So like, and if you haven't heard this by now, I'm sorry, but like, at the end of the day, they're doing this weird multi-dimensional thing, and I have a feeling that, and I haven't played Rebirth yet. I haven't played the PS5 version, so it being on PC, this is the first time that I'm playing it. It's just interesting that they are going to, from my perception at least, it seems as if they are going to kind of get people to meet each other again, and a lot of bad things have happened in the different storylines. So I'm interested to kind of see, if you've ever played the original Final Fantasy VII, it kind of gave you the feeling that that was the bad ending, right? Because the planet gets like a chunk taken out of it from a giant.
Hey now,
explosion.
Again, no spoilers.
This game is 30 plus years old. I'm spoiling it. I'm sorry.
Sure. It's 30 plus years old, but the old Sprite version is 30 plus years old.
Yes,
remake people still might be wanting to play.
I am ruining simply the old version. This is the old version that I'm ruining. In the old version, the original game, OG Final Fantasy VII, it felt like you got the bad ending. Aerith dies. A bunch of people from Avalanche die. What are you talking about? Stop. This game is 30 years old. I'm spoiling a 30-year-old game. Shut up.
Hey now. I'm talking
to
that type of show.
I'm talking to Sycamore specifically.
I know you are.
Yeah. So a lot of bad things happen. And through all those bad things that happen, the good guys persevere. They find, a positive attitude despite all the bad stuff that happens, and they work together to be able to win. And the way that happens is kind of convoluted or whatever, but I think that it is a very good story in where it tells, hey, even if things go bad, even when friends die, even when X, Y, and Z, you can still persevere and kind of make your goals happen. But what kind of story is this going to tell when it is 30 years old. 30 years. Umbra, you are a grown man. If you've chosen not to play Final Fantasy VII, the original one, 2 games into the new version of it, that's
so
on.
I didn't know this was going to be the show where we would whip Mr. Lucius Augustus for being the ever spoiler saga, but okay.
I'm sorry if you guys think that ruining a game that is 30 years old is too much. It's technically,
Lucius, because of the reimagining aspects of it, people feel like the statute of limitation has been reset.
No,
it's
a newer
game now.
It has not. This game is 30. This game is like 30 years old. I'm sorry. Yeah. Not only has there been multiple other games released to be able to reference this story, aka Ever Crisis. All right. Crisis.
All right, real quick.
There's been a movie.
Let me clear our palettes real quick.
Early 2000s,
which is a great movie, by the way. I love that movie.
And anyway. I'm not ruining like that one. I am ruining the very first one.
The first game. Yes.
If you're acting like you know absolutely nothing about Final Fantasy VII, after there's been 2 other games, a movie, and then 2 remakes that are completely changing the universe, I'm sorry, but that's on you.
Let me palate cleanse. Okay, real quick. Super chat. The great Luke Law, Xbox Expansion Pass, whose show will also be on somewhat at some point soon. So hopefully you catch their show as well. He said he's supporting great people with a $2 super chat. Thank you, good sir. We appreciate you. I hope more people are watching your show. If they're not, you definitely should be. Luke Law puts him and Captain Logan put on a great show every weekend. If you're not watching it, maybe you watch it, you listen to it during the week. That's how I do it. I listen to it when I'm going to work. Love these guys. They put on a great show every time. So thank you for showing some support. Appreciate you being here. The great Infinite Umbra, who's been a member for 9 months, he says, who do you seek to hurt us with these spoilers, Lucius? Who is it that you seek to hurt us with?
Hey, I'm sorry, but if you think if we can't have conversations about 30-year-old games, then we can't have conversations about anything.
And this is not a super chat, but I think this is a unique question that you, Lucius, would be uniquely qualified to help us answer. And this is Fuzzy Tomato asking the question, does anyone want to help him pick out a CPU to go with his new 7900 XTX? Sir, what are your thoughts?
So if you are going for 4K, there's plenty of AMD CPUs at a good price that you can get that are last gen that are still very good. My personal, if you want to ball out, what makes sense right now is to get the 9800X3D. The 9800X3D is hands down the best gaming CPU. Hands down, it beats everything. The only thing that comes really close is the 7800X3D, which is the last generation model of this gamer specific X3D model. I see some people in the chat are saying the 9950X3D. The 9950X3D will be about as good as the 9800X3D in gaming. It may be a little worse, but the biggest thing that you would get a 9950X3D instead of a 9800X3D is for like productivity. Those additional cores are going to help when it comes to productivity. They're not really going to help when it comes to like gaming performance too much. My biggest, no matter what you end up doing, my biggest thing is that you should try to make sure that whatever platform that you're going on has AM5 and DDR5. So you don't want to be on DDR4. You don't want to be on older, slower RAM. That's one. And two, just decide how much money you want to pay for a CPU, and then look for the best AMD AM5 CPU in that range. Because if you don't want to pay almost $500 for your CPU via the 9800X3D, which is a lot of money for a CPU, the only reason why I got a 9800X3D is because I was like, I don't want to have to worry about this computer for the next like 7 years.
Future proofing.
Yeah, like the 9800X3D, you could put that thing inside of a computer and you will not have to think about your CPU for
some time,
for almost 10 years. Like, and that's the reason why I got it. I am playing a lot of games, super high fidelity. I'm playing at 4K, I'm getting over 100 frames per second. And when I look at my CPU, like how much my CPU overall, not the individual cores, but the overall number that it takes up, I've barely cracked 20%. And you've heard the game.
And by the way, Lucius does this to me all the time, and now JB 1521 is doing it to him. So I will gladly showcase this. JB 1521 says, he said y'all broke boys can't do it like me.
Listen.
Yes, that's what he said. That's what he said. He put his pinky in the air when he said that too.
All I'm saying is that I saved money for this thing. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I bought exactly what I wanted. He
said you peasants can't deal with him. You peasants don't even think about.
No. Listen. Everybody has a price.
This is what Lucius does to me in Discord all the time. All the time he does.
But that's because your pinky is literally in the air.
Get out of here! No, it's not.
With my liquid cool 4090. You say that too often.
Sir. You sound like you're making you're sounding like someone I know, but not me. But okay,
that's
let's
you.
Keep it moving.
That's you.
Let's keep it moving.
That is you.
Anyway.
But yeah, I would.
But jokes aside, I would definitely take his recommendation. He swims far more in the AMD waters than I do, so I would actually go to him for recommendations on an AMD side CPU.
We can talk more about this.
Those waters.
We can talk about this more inside of the Discord. If you join the Discord, there is a channel called PCMR, And inside of the PCMR conversation, you can kind of ask us a couple things, and we'll give you suggestions.
Absolutely, yeah.
We won't do what
we have fun in the Discord all the time.
We won't do what Infinite Umbra wants us to do, which is make an entire build for him and then just like hand him the spec sheet so that way he can go to somebody and make it build.
Just hand it to him and say, "See, this is the PC that I built.
Yeah,
here's some instructions.
Here's the PC I built. Go buy it." No,
that's right.
You should learn at least a little bit about the expensive things.
Stop putting Umbra's shame on the streets, sir. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm putting my friend underneath the bus. He needs to learn.
And you're driving over him back and forth. Be nice.
Back and forth.
So anyway,
slow mo to do it for you, bro.
Slow mo, man. You shouldn't do that. Come on.
Weak knees.
You gotta teach a man how to fish. You don't give him fish. You gotta teach him how to fish. Anyway.
Now the next time that Umbra wants to get his third computer for some obscene reason, he's gonna go to slow mo and ask him to build it again because the man did not learn. It takes me literally 10 minutes on PC Part Picker to build a PC. I do it for fun.
Let's move on. Let's move on. I don't want to put him. I want to keep dissing him in the Discord, not on Front Street. Let's diss him in Discord.
All right. Love you, Umbra. Love you, Umbra.
So anyway, join the Discord where you too can diss Infinite Umbra. But yes, you were initially talking about Final Fantasy Rebirth. We'll get back to that talk unless you want to move on to a different game. But real quick, before we do that, I want to once again address, I know some people in the chat were asking, where is Everlate Saga? Mr. Everlate Saga will not be joining us today, but that's because he is at the Garden State Comic Fest. And that is the Winter Fest that's taking place today and tomorrow. It is in the Sussex County Fairgrounds in Augusta, New Jersey. If you know where it is, you know it's going down today and tomorrow. If you have a chance to go check it out, if you are on the fence, hey, maybe you choose to go now, because if you go there, you will meet the Everborn Saga. He is there with his wares, as you see. He's ready to chop it up with you. So if you haven't had the chance to go check him out live and direct, now's your chance. If you happen to be in the Jersey area, shout out to the great Everborn Saga. He will be back next week. But just folks who are not sure where he is, what's going on, he's not late today. He will not be joining us because he has some prior engagements. Salute to Everborn Saga. He will be with us next week. I hope his ventures are successful there. But we will be joined momentarily by our special guest. He's also on his way to us soon. I've been chatting with him in the DMs real quick. Soil Tech, the great Soil Tech, with a $2 super chat. He says, are you getting things like the 40 or the 5090? Okay. We'll talk a bit more in depth about it on the Gamers Playground on Monday night. But I will tell you right now, for me, myself, and I today, I don't see its value being a person who already has a 4090. If you have a lower spec card and you want to go the 5090 route, I would the lower spec card of the previous generation you have, the more beneficial that upgrade is for you. For me, since I have a 4090 already, the 5090 so far does not seem like such a $2,000 value for me to upgrade. So for now, I'm just kind of sticking with my 4090, seeing how it all shakes out. I suspect, and Nvidia has already basically spilled the tea on that. In short order, maybe in like 6 months to a year, they will bring more of the 5090 features to the 4090 set. Not everything, and even if they do bring everything, it wouldn't run as well on a 4090 as it is on a 50 because they have the overhead for it. But because it is the way it is right now, I don't feel the need to upgrade. Will I at some point? Maybe if it gets cost effective enough, or if the feature set gets good enough to where I feel like, hey, maybe it's time. But in the short term today, nah, I'm okay with my 4090. I like it. I haven't seen any time where I'm like, oh man, I wish I had more frames or I had more fidelity or any of that. It runs well, so I'm not upgrading. So that's me today. I reserve the right to change it tomorrow, but today that's me. so that's that, right? All right. So, Lucius, any other games, any other things you wish to bring up for our discussion, sir?
I do want to give a quick answer to the person who asked in the chat about the CPU. A quick answer without going too much into it is the Ryzen 5 7600X. It's within AM5 socket, so you can get a motherboard, that supports AM5, and in like 3 to 5 years you can upgrade the CPU without also upgrading your motherboard. That's a cool thing about AM5. Uh,
Mhm.
it's new enough so that way it's going to get supported at least for the next 5 years. This is a 6-core, 12-thread processor. It costs about like $150 to $200, so it's pretty cheap, but it's going to give you very, very good performance, especially at 1440p.
Okay.
At 4K, it will have some small issues because it only has 6 cores, but at 1440p, this CPU will be incredible.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Oh, and the great Paris Lilly, shout out to Paris. He's in the chat. He says if you have a 4090, you don't need a 5090. It's more of a future-proof card versus any games that are in the next couple of years to take advantage of its performance. He was able to get his hands on it. And by the way, I will bring Paris up once more because he got a chance, him and his cohorts over at the Gamertag Radio got a chance to speak with Phil Spencer. Great interview.
Yeah, that was a great interview.
We will bring that up.
Good job.
We will bring that up on this show. Yes, great interview. Him and Destin somehow. I think Phil woke up one morning, felt svelte because that man's looking good. By the way, I don't know.
Yeah, he's looking a lot better. He was looking bad there for a bit. I was like, man,
he's gotten it together. That's right.
Acquisition tore my man's up.
But now he looks like he went to the gym a little bit. He looks like he's back, refreshed.
Like he's
I saw him on Paris' stream and also some shots on Destin's stream, and he was looking good. He's got some interesting talking points. We will talk about that soon.
We will get to that because
we'll get to that one. Yes.
There's a couple things specifically in Destin's conversation that he said. Okay. He kept saying a very specific word that kept triggering me, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. But yes, shout out to Phil, to Paris and Destin. Great interviews. Awesome interviews. We always love to see people within our community get great folks to chat with. So shout out to Paris for that. Thank you so much for always continuing to be in our chat.
And thank you, Paris. I will give you your flowers here. Thank you for asking the questions that he
asked good questions
to ask. I would say that you didn't ask them the way that I would have asked them, but you still
hey man, there's a reason he gets to ask it and not us, because the way he asks.
That's true.
Anyway, so let's get back to the game talk, bro. Any other games that you wanna make mention of?
Nah, man, I've just been bouncing across stuff all over the place. Marvel Rivals is a constant part of my life. Somehow I've already put in 100 hours into this game since it came out. I don't know how that's happened. But it did.
Excellent. Would you be surprised if I tell you, as much of a Marvel zombie as I am, I don't have any substantial hours in Marvel Rivals just yet?
No, I think all you did was like load it up on one of your handhelds, go inside of the training thing, and that's it. That's all you did.
Because I want games like that. I want to play with people. I don't want to play with just randos.
No,
that game shines bright when you play your position correctly. So I kind of want to wait until I have others who play their positions correctly in order for me to fit myself in. You know what I mean?
I play all the time. If you want to play, let me know. I know.
I want to play
randomly at like 2 o'clock in the morning. so
I'm sure I can even get John Wolf to play, because Marvel Zombies, man. We there. We're definitely. I would love to play that game. So yes, Marvel Zombies. We're gonna get there. I think Marvel Rivals is something. In a very crowded world right now, they've done something special. So I do want to give it some attention.
I think it's the reverence towards the IP, because it's one of those things where it's like, man, the amount of work that the Concord team put in Concord, despite the character designs being trash and yada yada, and obviously you don't have any reverence towards those characters, but I would say that they put in as much effort, if not more, than what Marvel Rivals put in. And once again, I'm praising Marvel Rivals for how much reverence they seem to have towards these characters. And if only that Concord team actually had an IP that people cared about, I think that it probably would have succeeded.
It would have gone somewhere else. Yeah,
absolutely. Outside of the gameplay, outside of everything else, Marvel Rivals is very fun. But like, man, the love and dedication that they put towards those IPs. Like if you know Marvel comics, like the fact that like you have the like Malice version of Susan Storm as like a like, and you have
they dug into the crates. They really dug into the crates.
To really, and it's just like, and it's causing more and more people to not only understand these kind of B, C tier kind of characters, but it's like you're doing more research about these people. I didn't even know that Squirrel Girl was even a thing. I didn't know that
Squirrel Girl was a thing. I love Squirrel Girl, bro. That's great.
I didn't, and there's these new characters that they're also introducing to the Marvel kind of universe, but they've been in one or two things before, like Luna Snow. Didn't really knew that she existed. It was like a one-shot thing that she was a part of. They're really incorporating her. Penny Parker was only in like 2 or 3 things. Like she was in one comic, and then she was in the Spider-Verse movies, but that's pretty much it. But the fact that they're pulling that and like making that character,
it's really good.
More kind of like on the front side of people's minds. It's a good way to really expand the IP. Now the movies will be able to take advantage of this love and reverence that people have, and actually have maybe a Penny Parker movie themselves or something like that.
About that, if you love this, and I agree with you, I think what they're doing here in the Marvel Rivals with the characters and how they're putting really some work on the characters and the details and digging through the crates and all that. If you love that, I have to say, and I know most people have not spent the time on it, and we won't spend time on it here, but I'll just say, if you love them digging through the crates in the way they are in Marvel Rivals, you need to see What If, the final season, season 3. It is just, it's the same digging through the crates, same putting together characters that you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this. Yes, they've done it now that the rose is off the bloom a little bit for Marvel, so maybe not as many people watched it. But I feel like if Marvel was at a tight, in the zeitgeist and this season came about, people would be talking about it on Discord. People would be talking about it in spaces. It's wild what they did in season 3. But no one cared of What If.
Oh, What If.
It is very much that. It's so good. It's good.
I watched it. Yeah, I watched it. I think that the problem with What If season 3 is that they still had a lot of the same characters again, and what I want out of an anthology is
they finished the thread of those characters rather than adding new characters.
Yes. But what I want out of an anthology are actually new, interesting, crazy stories. And what we got was one larger story via it had a through line where it had multiple people coming together. And it's not to say that I didn't like it. It's just say that
it's fun. It was great.
It was good, but it was very good. But for me, I like my anthologies to be more kind of out there.
Disparate stories. Yes. Disparate story is crazy. I get it. But I love Storm, so this is a spoiler for me. I love Storm, so if you love Storm,
bro,
season 3, baby. Oh,
they make
so
Storm,
good.
Storm is already an Omega level mutant. You don't need to make her stronger. They did.
She's the end all be all in the season 3. She's awesome.
Like
anyway,
2 upgrades.
That's right. Yeah, and I also love Captain Britain. So what's her name?
They love
Captain Carter. She's
the people at Marvel right now love Captain.
Captain Carter. Yes, and I love Captain Carter too. So I was there. I wanted to see her in real. I wanted to see her with the real shield in a real movie, but it is what it is. We'll move on. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it.
In our age of anti-DEI, there's the only way that you can have alternative versions of someone is via
has to be an Elseworld story.
It has to be animation, and because if for some reason people have this strong association with real life actors playing someone, and if it deviates from what is inside
even slightly, people are rioting.
It's so you're never gonna get the live action Captain Carter. That ain't gonna happen.
So let's switch it back to games, and while we do that, I will point out this chat real quick, which is so righteous, so true. J Mac, the great J Mac, salute to you, good sir. He says Lowly Mountain Snow Riders is a great little game in Game Pass, especially if you like challenges. # Graybeards in the building. I too recommend Lowly Mountain Snow Riders. It is awesome. I've been playing it all week. It's freaking great. It's that small little game you didn't know you wanted. It's why I have Game Pass. It's literally why that game is why I have Game Pass. I would not have thought about it. I would have skipped it if I saw it on Steam, but I saw it here. I tried it out. It lives on my handhelds right now. Lonely Mountain Snowboarding, Snow Riders. Very, very good game. You were going to say, Lucius?
I put a little bit of time into this game just to be able to test it out, and it is fun. I really like the sound design, the sound of the snow, and like based off how you're turning, it's very good. It's very like ASMR, and it's like a
very tranquil, zen.
Very tranquil kind of game.
Oh, it's so good.
But the type of person that I am, I can't play those type of games. I can't play because it's the reason why I don't play like the Crash Bandicoots or the Astros of the world. I want to get a perfect run. And I want to get a perfect run, and so much that I just restart the
you'll
level
play it over and over again. Yes. Me too.
Sometimes I won't even beat the freaking level once. I'm just trying to do everything perfectly, and it just I won't say that it wastes my time, but
it'll kill your time. It'll kill your time. It just will. Yes.
And I'm just like, I can't do this. I can't.
It's an awesome Zen game that has this devilish like gameplay loop in it that if you're not careful, you'll get messed up and you'll blow many hours on it. But
and I know the type of person that I am, so I'm like, I can't play this game. Great game.
It's an excellent game. Yep. I agree. Shout out to J Mac for the great recommend. If you haven't tried it and you have Game Pass, please give it a shot. And actually, it leads me into some other Game Pass stuff that I want to talk about real quick before we get into. I think after this, and shout out to the 200 folks on all the various platforms that are watching us. Salute to y'all. Please hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. We love that y'all are here with us on a Saturday morning. Shout out to you guys for being here and continuing to support us. Let me quickly talk about a game that's not a game. It's been with us since, I would say it's been with me since I've been gaming my entire life, basically. And when you think it's gone, it comes back. And for years now, I have been throwing flowers at this thing, but I've always also couched it in a little bit of criticism because I feel like it's a great. It's really excellent at what it does, but it could do more in the gamification space. Now, what am I talking about? I am talking about, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Flight Simulator. Yes, most people are like, yeah, we know what Flight Sim is. Yeah, we've played Flight Sim. It's good. You try it a little bit, you put it to the side. I will say, I've always been a huge fan of Flight Sim. The reason why I'm such a fan of Flight Sim is because I know the history of Flight Sim, where back in the day, I know people, families who built humongous rigs just for this simulator. And it's not a game, I call it a simulator because for a long time, that's been my criticism. It doesn't have enough gaming aspects of it. It doesn't gamify it enough for me, right? So as great of a technology as they bring to it, as awesome of a game as it is, people just kind of look at it, go, yep, this is good, and then they move on, right? Those who are fans for life, and those who are on the fence, this gets a little bit too complicated for some, I think, right? So they tend to just kind of, respect it and then move on. They sent me a code. So shout out to Microsoft for sending me a code. They sent me a code, the premium code, in order to give the game a try. And I gotta say, what I'm surprised they've gamified it far more than they originally like thought, right? I will still say I think that it needs more gamification, right? I know myself.
If you were flying like this in real life, your engines would stall.
Oh yeah,
engines would stall immediately.
This was literally me starting it up again, not playing it for many months, like many months. Yeah, I have a stick. I have a stick. Yeah, that's why you see this. It was me getting used to my stick and throttle.
Yeah. Getting calibrated again.
Yes, like it's one thing to play with a controller. It makes it quite easy. You're able to do what you want to do. It's fine. But when you're playing properly with a stick, oh boy, it's properly challenging. But at the end of the day, you want it to be challenging.
My first job out of college was me testing out flight simulators for a private company on a Navy base.
I remember that. I remember you saying that. Yeah. So how's your experience with flight sim? Like, do you play it?
I played probably maybe like 50 hours in the last flight sim. I had to get rid of my Thrustmaster a couple years ago, so I've never been able to play it the way that I want to. And the Thrustmasters nowadays, they're like the
way expensive.
They're very expensive. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to like do that right now. There's other things that I want to buy. So at some point, I will like rebuild my setup, get a new Thrustmaster, all that. People are saying pause because of the name, and then I'll be able to play more. But yeah,
play it properly. With this Thrustmaster.
Yeah, I saw they did a lot of cool things with the newest update for 2024, but I haven't had a chance to jump into it yet. I enjoyed the last one, so if they added things that make it even easier to kind of do what you need to do, then I'd be excited to test it out again. But
exactly, and that's why I bring this up, right? And shout out to Brian Scully. He says Flight Simulator is a bit too involved for me. Got too much to play to really get into it, really, right? And I hear you, right? And I've been that way as well. I've always respected it from a technology perspective, and from the fact that, like, as I said, I know people who are not gamers, but their whole family are flight simulators, and they build PCs specifically to play this thing. And until the Series S, the only way to really get into this game was to really like buy a huge monster rig to play this thing, and it was like really involved. So like the fact that it's now very much easy for normals to get their hands on it is like so like commendable and amazing to me.
Let me spend 30 seconds just kind of explaining why it was so difficult.
Look at the way I landed here. This is crazy.
So let me get into why it was so difficult for such a long time. Because Microsoft dropped support for Flight Simulator. They still own the IP, but they had not made a new version of Flight Sim for decades, literally decades. And so if you needed to get your Flight Sim fixed, there was a bunch of companies that were licensing a lot of the technology behind Flight Sim to be able to create something like more modern versions of it. But the problem is, because it was based off of the original code, everything was heavily single threaded. So you had to get like the highest end CPU just to be able to have a chance to be able to run it well.
The most monsters of machines could run this game. Even like, I remember flights in 1979. It's that old.
Yeah.
Like it's that old.
The last one from Microsoft was Flight Sim either 2000 or I think
2000. I think that's the last one from Microsoft I played.
So from Microsoft specifically. And then, so you had to deal with a bunch of these third-party companies that weren't doing the full stack development necessary to kind of redo the entire thing. They were just kind of like making it prettier. But like when the game is trying to simulate the world and it's all stuck on one core, that's gonna
got a problem.
So them Microsoft investing money to like kind of redo the entire game again is really good, because now at least now this thing isn't like stuck on one core at 100% and the rest of your cores and threads are like 0.
Unused. That's right. Yeah. But I mean, long story short, at this point, it can be played in the cloud. It can be played on like the equivalence of a console potato, right? And it still runs amazing. And when this game first was released in the latest iteration, I played it, loved it, right? But if you got too close to the map, you would see all the cool effects turn flat, because they're basically just using AI to kind of give the map, give the real world map some kind of grooves and some kind of agency within the texture mapping. They when you get too close, obviously it loses its thread. Now I can smack into buildings, and they are buildings, like they are full buildings, which you shouldn't do because that's a bad thing. But yes, they've really worked out the world. It really looks amazing. I have to say, like my flight stick is over here. I basically reinstalled everything. It's back on my main PC because they've done really good work here. I will say, if you are like me and your criticism is, hey, I wish they would gamify it a bit more, they've done a lot more in that realm. They have challenges, activities, a bunch of different stuff, which if you're looking at the gameplay, you'll see now some of that as well, right? You can do rally races, you can do lots of different things, but I still do think that it could benefit from even more gamification. It's still very much a simulator with gamified aspects. I would love it to be more even Steven as far as it being a game first with simulation aspects. Right now, it's still very much a simulator, a hardcore simulator with gamification aspects to it as well. What I mean by that, and Lucius, maybe you can agree with me or disagree with me on this one. If you like, and you see the weird, there were a little bit of spottiness as soon as I zoomed in. You see a little bit of the shiny. That's I think that's because of DLSS. I'm not sure. Like I started with this with DLSS, but yes, it goes away shortly. But I think the best way to describe this this thing is kind of like Forza Horizon to Forza Motorsport, right? Both of them have the same hardcore sim aspect, but Horizon uses the assistance far more from jump. So the default control scheme for Horizon is far more arcadey, but you could turn it into a simulator if you wanted, right? I wish that someone would take the bones that are here as far as flight sim and create like almost a fun arcadey version of it, while you're able to pull back a lot of the assistance and get that game playing that way, right? I wish we had that. We don't, right? And you can make it work here, but I wish we had someone that by default, it was more arcadey than it is simulator. I think this game would be far more appreciated and respected if we did that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it gives them the same opportunity. I think it's really about
and real quick before I see some folks in the chat. The reason for the weird footage right now is because I have like literally a VR headset on. That's why you're seeing it this way. I have a VR headset on and I'm looking all around while I'm racing. So that's why it's all like upside down weird. Forgive me. You can do this in VR as well while you're holding to your stick and everything. So that's why the footage is weird. Anyway, continue. Yes.
Oh, you're crashing into the ground. Oh no.
Yes, yeah. Because of VR. I'm like, how does it look when you crash? Oh my God. Yes, I was having fun. Anyway, please.
Yeah, yes. I think that all of that is possible. It's just the code base needs to be solid enough. I think that the Forza Motorsport games, their code base up until the most recent one have been so solid that the Horizon team have been able to take that and just build something on top of it, and it's on top of it. Easy. That's right. Yeah. It's really easy. No, well, nothing's really easy about game development, but it's significantly easier to be able to build something on top of a code base that is rock solid than something that's a bit shaky. So I think it's really going to be determined based off of how rock solid this code base is, and if they can easily kind of get a team to build something on top of this without all the technical debt that comes with, for example, I'm really afraid for the next Forza Horizon because the most recent Forza Motorsport had serious issues. It had some serious issues when it comes to some of its technology. So I'm concerned, will the Horizon team be able to take that code base and really make something out of it? And what I'll say about this footage, it is not easy to fly a fighter jet properly.
Oh boy, and it is crazy.
They're actually very difficult to fly because you need to have the correct amount of like fuel and power being put into
at all times.
At all times, or else you stall very easily.
I see you, Slow-Mo, talking smack about my gameplay. You try flight sim, sir. It is not easy, sir. It's not. This is not like Ace Combat where you're just going where you want. Yeah. There's so much to just flying. It's crazy.
So what you're seeing happen, like right before Kay crashed that last time, you saw like a pillow of clouds accumulate on top of his wings, and that happens when you're making a sharp turn and you accumulate a bunch of moisture from the air. But if you don't if you don't burn while you're doing that, you stall.
You stall. Yeah, it's crazy. It is such a simulator, right? And that's where I'm like, I love that. I love that you're learning that stuff while you're playing. I just wish it was more gamified and there was more guidance in that, right? You learn as you go. I feel like because of that learning as you go stuff, some people might just be like, oh, this is too simulator for me and move on. When if they were to stick with it a bit, it's really cool. Like it's really like real life cool. Like the reason I like this so much is it reminds me of, say, like Rock Band or Guitar Hero back when people were playing that tactile stuff. Whereas the reason why I compared this to, say, Rock Band is it like you won't learn to play guitar using plastic instruments, but you'll learn to play drums doing that, right? And this gives you the fundamentals of aviation in a real way while still enjoying a game, you know. So I always respect this thing. I think it's amazing. And yes, I will continue to keep this installed on my hard drive. My wife recently, actually, the reason why I've been crazy this week, my wife is in Colombia right now on vacation. So everywhere she tells me she's been, or everywhere she tells me she's going, I type it in here, and I've been flying there, and she shows me pictures of her being there, and I fly in Flight Simulator and see those images, and it's almost like identically the same. Very, very cool. So we'll stop talking Flight Sim, but if you haven't checked out Flight Sim, I say please check it out. It's awesome. It's been with me my whole gaming life, and I'll continue to install it and continue to play it. But you know, I wish hopefully the next version of it they gamify it even more than they have currently. But if you haven't tried it out, especially if you have a Game Pass, it's a no-brainer. Check it out. Shout out to Microsoft for providing the code for it. I will continue to play it. Maybe you'll see some footage from me, just like, you know, playing around. I'll maybe do a stream so you guys can laugh at me in real time as I keep crashing. It is what it is. We shall see. But yes, thank you to Microsoft for providing the code via Keymailer, and there's that. So if you haven't checked it out, I suggest you do. I would also talk about another game, but we're running a little short on time, so we'll move on to our stories proper. I'll just say next week you'll probably catch me talking about Eternal Strands, another game coming to Game Pass, which I've been playing. Most likely you'll see like a review from me about the game on thegamingcircle.com. Keep your eyes out for that. I most likely will talk about it next week, give you some footage or whatnot, but I've been playing it for a little while. It's your Zelda slash Shadow of the Colossus slash and Zelda because of Breath of the Wild. You'll know what I'm talking about. It's coming to Game Pass next week. It's cool. I'll give you my full thoughts on it later, but it's cool. You know, I think Rick L has a good handle on what this game is. A little janky, but it's fun. You know, so we'll talk about that next week. But shout out to them for providing codes, and yeah, I think we can move on from there. So first off, again, shout out to everybody that's here. 230 plus people watching on all the various platforms. You know we appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for continuing to rock with us on a Saturday morning. I have word that the Fox will join us and we will start our handheld talk. But before then, I don't want to stop this conversation. I don't want to like move on without at least talking about and I know Lucius, you'll be appreciative of this. I want to talk about a bit of the Dev Direct and what happened there, maybe show a little bit of footage. And while we have that conversation, we also have the backdrop of the recent interviews that we talked about it a little while ago, with the Destin conversation with Phil Spencer and the Paris's conversation with Phil Spencer via Gamer Tag Radio. So we'll get that started now. Let me put some of the footage on the screen here for the Dev Direct. First and foremost, let me ask you, Lucius, what's your score of this Dev Direct? What did you think of this thing? We've seen they've done this many times at this point. How did this one grab you?
First watching, 10 out of 10. Second watching,
wow.
Watching, 9 out of 10. And I think that after watching it a second time, I was just like, maybe some of the developer sections went on a little too long. Okay.
So, all right. There were how many? There were 4 or 5 games. There were 5 games, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep, 5 games.
5 games. Yeah. Before we even go deep into it, what was your favorites that they showed?
I think for me, Expedition 33 is still looking very good. It's still kind of it was my game of the show for the June showcase, and I think it's still my game of the show for this showcase. But what I will say, I think that before, when I saw Expedition 33, I was like, man, can this game be real? Is this because it looks too incredible? And then this showing, it's like, oh, okay, this is just a video game. Like I'm starting to see the seams, and that's not a bad thing, right? When I see the seams in video games, it's like, okay, this is a real video game in comparison to what I could be looking at. Could be some sort of cutscene situation, see whatever. But this is a relatively small team. This is their first project, so really excited about Expedition 33. So I think that's probably is my game
Be
of the
your
show.
favorite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Despite the
Okay.
fact that I was incredibly hyped to be able to see uh Ninja Gaiden. Um,
Mm.
and that was it was really fun jumping back into Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. And I think there are parts of me that as I'm getting older, I'm becoming a worse gamer. But then I touched Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, and I'm like, nah, man, I still got it. I still
I
got it.
mean, could it be that, or could it be what Fortnite does, which is lull you into a false sense of security by giving you this power fantasy until you hit like a mid boss, and then they really tell you who you
No,
are,
no,
which
no.
is
I
not
finished.
that great.
I finished
You finished
chapter
the mid
one.
boss?
I finished
Okay,
chapter
good,
one.
good, good,
I
good,
completely finished
good.
chapter one. That last boss, that spider boss, super annoying,
Mm-hmm.
incredibly annoying.
Yes, yes, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, yes, yes.
but I was
But
able
okay,
I was able to
so
beat
so
him.
your game of show was Expedition 33. I
Yeah,
think by and large I agree with you that Expedition 33 was my game of show, but I too am biased because last year Gamescom, I think I said this to you guys, at Gamescom I was allowed to get my hands on it. I got to play. I got to meet some of the devs that you see on the show here. I got to
yeah,
meet with them. They played it for me live. Like what they were showing was just magic from beyond the stars. It looked just like you. You're like, is this possible? 30, like how many people made this? Like 30 people made this game? And Unreal Engine 5, insane graphics. It looked like ridiculously crazy. Right?
yeah. I think
I would
Unreal
say a
Engine
short
5 is allowing smaller teams to come out with
to
incredibly
shoot their shot really well.
impressive
Yeah.
things, but you can still kind of see the seams, and you can still see, oh, this is still
Yep.
a double A game because there isn't
Yep.
kind of the fleur. Like when you only have like 30 people, you don't have time to like let one person hyper focus on like transition animations so that way everything looks smooth in between each. No, you don't have time for that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But I would say a close second is South of Midnight.
Yes,
I really loved what South of Midnight showed. Ladies and gentlemen, before we even continue, and we're gonna talk about what we liked, what we disliked, and all of that. But of course, as we said today, we wanna talk a bit more handheld stuff, right? We have the Switch announced now. You see some of the Switch stuff is super interesting. I want to get into the Switch stuff. We want to talk speeds and feeds a bit, what it looks like the Switch is doing, and what we should expect and maybe not expect from the Switch. And to do all that with, we have, I would say, one of the greatest guests we could have on this show. If you've seen any of his work, you know why I am super excited to have him back on the show. We call him Handheld Jesus, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Fox.
Hey,
Welcome, sir. How you
hey,
doing?
very good. How are you guys? Sorry for my tardiness.
Oh, please. This is what we do on GCP. People jump in. You know, you're ready. You want to jump in? You're welcome to do so. We appreciate you being here, sir.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, welcome. Before we get into the handheldness of it all, because we definitely want to pick your brain about that. Lucius is here as well. He and I are very, very excited for the technology and all of that. So we're gonna pick your brain on that. But right off the bat, we were just like recapping some of the stuff that happened with the Dev Direct. I know you're a gamer like us. You probably watched or seen some of the footage, if not all. So we'll start there. I'll start with you, Kerry. What'd you think of the show? I know these days Xbox tends to do different things with their shows than PlayStation and Nintendo does. You know, how are you feeling about their marketing arm as of late?
So tonally, I think that they hit all the right marks with a wide range. Even though it was only 4 games, they had a very wide range of genres that they were showing off and highlighting, Japanese games, right? So you have now. So I'm. This is something that I do from a long time ago. I call it Ninja Gaiden. I know it's like Gaiden or whatever. I just say Gaiden because that's what I said when I was 8 years old. So it'll come out. So if I'm mispronouncing it, just please.
It's fine.
Dude, I love when Microsoft on their developer decks has their surprise drops, like Hi-Fi Rush was, and then
absolutely
So when they had that, when I saw that they had another one, I was like, oh. See, little Sigmar, thank you. Love you too. When I saw that surprise drop, I love that whole part because it gets a little bit more excited. Instead of just thinking about something that's far in the distance, we can all just kind of like clamor around and just get to something that just came out. So I
Yeah.
love that they had that surprise drop. The remake looks really good insofar as the still images that I've seen comparing the old version just to the new ones. The remake looks great. The new version that's coming out, I am excited for. I think, I talked about this in a previous podcast as well, is that Ninja Gaiden, back in the day when I played Ninja Gaiden 1, like, dude, the intro scene from the original NES, I think everyone has core memories of that.
Oh, yeah.
Epic, the
Absolutely.
music, the
Absolutely.
somber tones, everything about it has a special core, place in my heart. And playing through that, there was, a terminology for old games called Nintendo Hard. And these are the adaptation of arcade games to console, where you weren't plunking down more quarters to continue. They still had the same difficulty, but they were like, here's 5 lives, good luck. So you had this, like, you became almost a savant of these games after time, where you knew everything.
I think it's what eventually turned to FromSoft Hard. It started with arcade hard, right? Like, it started there.
So FromSoft still has that same type of mentality. They're just like, in you go, figure it out. And so for me, the thing was, I had more time back then because the selection of games that I would have available to me was far less than there was today. So I had the opportunity to punish myself and like get this rote memorization of how to beat games and have that satisfaction. And Ninja Gaiden continues that same difficulty, but I don't have that same time allowance to really invest into it. So it's it's the same thing for like Marvel Rivals. I have some buddies that are playing Marvel Rivals, and I still have not played it yet. And the longer I don't play it, the more I feel like I've
likely not going to play it.
Yeah, like I've lost. Like in the beginning, whenever you play these newer games, there's an allowance from everyone. Like, well, everyone's new and you're figuring things out. But now it's almost like there's codified things of like, well, you're support, you're DPS. If you're playing dumb, and then you're trying to catch up. So you're not even good, and you don't even know the meta. So it's like all of these things fall in line with that. Is that if I don't have
we define those as graybeard problems around here, sir. That's what we define those as. Yes, indeed.
So that when I look at these games, I still appreciate the difficulty, and I want the difficulty to be there, but it's something that I have to recognize that I have to balance with my backlog. Sometimes I feel guilty with, like, I don't have the time to invest in this, and I don't want to make it easier on myself because I feel like that's not the intention. So I still have an immense I love looking at these types of games that are coming out, so I'm happy for that. South of Midnight looks awesome. Is there an option to for me, I love
to toggle the stop motion? Yes, there is. Yes,
I know exactly what you were talking about before you even asked the question.
Yes. Absolutely. Ooh,
that was a phone call for me. No worries, it's personal.
No worries.
I actually like the stop motion, but I know some other people that don't like it. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm getting another call.
No worries. Yeah, no worries. Please go for it. But all right, Lucius, go ahead.
I wanted to mention, since we were talking about this entire event, the new the spec sheets for Doom: The Dark Ages came out. And just like Indiana Jones, which is an id Software game, there are ray tracing requirements on Doom: The Dark Ages. It is from the bare minimum, whatever, they have some form of ray tracing on Doom: The Dark Ages. That is the bare minimum thing. I'm very interested to see how the game's going to perform on handhelds, because those Doom games have notoriously been very, very good to be able to run on those. But when you have ray tracing as a requirement, just like I wonder how they're going to run on a handheld.
Yeah, I want your, and I know Carrie, you're back. I want your thoughts on it, but I will say quickly, like, I hear you, and to your point, id Tech games have historically played awesome on handhelds, right? I still play Doom Eternal on my handheld. I even turn on ray tracing and get 30 frames per second with ray tracing on a handheld. Indiana Jones did not play bad on a handheld. It played rather well on an 8840U, 7840U device. So,
but Indiana Jones, not as action heavy as a Doom game. You really want for a Doom game, for me personally, at least on a handheld, I need 40 FPS at bare minimum.
Like, at least, yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And so I wonder how a lot of the older handhelds like the 6800U, the
Yeah.
7840U, those
Hmm.
how are those
How are
gonna
they gonna
do?
handle it? Yeah.
The most popular handhelds outside of the Steam
Hmm.
Deck is the ROG Ally with the Z1 Extreme. So it's like,
Hmm.
how is that gonna do when it comes to ray tracing on this thing? I don't know.
What do you think, Harry?
It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a big
Mm.
challenge for so ray tracing is going to clobber these GPUs, and RDNA threes is supposed to have some method of handling ray tracing better than RDNA 2 would. In effect, it's a bit better, but not leagues better. The reality is that it's going to be a challenge, but id Tech is hopefully going to get us across the finish line. But I still would imagine that you're going to have similar issues to so even for Indiana Jones, that just had real time global illumination, not even like full path tracing, right? So we have to understand like what do they mean by what ray tracing is. I saw a quick blurb that they are using ray tracing to actually understand how bullets are detected on hitting enemies. So it's not even just
Wow.
visually; it's to enhance hit detection and stuff. So they're going an extra mile on it. So I don't know how that's all going to go boil down into a handheld space. So it'll be interesting to see how that is accomplished. But I think what we're gonna be witnessing is going to be the beginning of games that are eclipsing what is playable on handhelds.
This is
Mm.
the sort of innovation that I kind of wanted to happen, though. Like using ray tracing in interesting ways. Like
Yeah,
this is the second developer that I've heard use ray tracing in a way that isn't just like reflections,
Puddles.
global
It's
illuminations, or
just
something like that,
puddles.
or shadows.
Yeah.
Like using ray tracing as a way to be able to like tell bullet trajectory. That makes so much
Hmm.
sense. There was another dev, I can't remember for what game it was, but that used ray tracing for sound
Yes.
modeling
Yes.
inside of the game. And I'm like,
Hmm.
this is the sort of way that we should be using these new technologies, not just
Yeah.
to be able to make something shinier. Like there should be new, interesting, innovative ways to be able to kind of really take advantage of this stuff.
Yep.
yeah,
Excellent. Yeah. No, I don't disagree. Go ahead.
yeah. So one of the things that I think that was because we're still in the infancy of ray tracing and games having ray tracing, the real benefit outside of all the real neat, innovative ways that we can do this is that games being created from the get go with ray tracing in mind. And that is, I don't know when that will actually be an occurrence, but up until then, we still have artists that have to pre bake everything for lighting for every environment that they're doing.
Hmm.
So every time that there's a change, an artist has to come in and then make changes for the lighting. Whereas if it was a ray trace game from the get go, there is no, all of that work is just done because it's
Hmm.
just where how the light falls. So they're just,
Yeah.
breaking up light sources or putting in light sources where they need to be. So a full ray trace game should actually accelerate game development, but I don't know when we'd actually get there where there was no raster, generalized thing to begin with. It's ray tracing to begin with. So
Hmm.
that's like a light at the end of the tunnel type of thing. And there's all these other technologies that are trying to figure out ways to get around Moore's law and coming to the end of silicon as we know it, and how we slowly approach to getting advances and stuff. So we have all this upscaling tech, and we have all of this fake frames, so to speak, to
Is that the new narrative? Fake frames. Everybody's talking about fake frames these days,
yeah,
Well,
and
I
they
mean,
say it in a pejorative light.
the whole point of getting higher frames was to get
Yeah.
better response time.
yeah.
So if you decouple response time with frames, people are going to have an issue with that.
Yeah,
True.
so
Yeah.
then there's a bunch of stuff that you can do. So there's asynchronous reprojection type of things, which is Reflex 2,
Hmm.
essentially. So you are no longer marrying the input with the viewport. So the input is now separated from what is being rendered. So when you move the mouse, the window moves regardless if the frame can be rendered. So then you have like this they call it warping, and any type of thing that you have. So there's in painting that happens. If you imagine like you're looking at a window, right, and that is the only window, and if you look over here real quick, there would just be blackness there until this could be rendered
until the screen moves to it and then it paints it in. Yeah.
So what NVIDIA is doing is they're doing all this DLSS stuff. They're just like, let's figure out what is gonna be there so that you have that input latency that feels very, very responsive. So that's a neat thing, and that's something that VR has already done. So VR has already did that type of stuff a long time ago, and asynchronous reprojection tech, like tech demos, have been available on PC, and it feels great. And you can see it, you could like kind of like say make it go to 240, and then you see really bad in painting, right? And it's trying to blend all of those edges of wherever you're looking. So there's all these things to try to put a band-aid solution on trying to fix input latency, because if you're 30 FPS but your FPS is, if you render at 30 FPS but then you see 120 FPS because you have 3 fake frames in between your real render, if your input latency is at 33 milliseconds but then you also have the added latency of all of those frames coming in because you have to draw the other ones. So now you're at like 66 milliseconds just to see the 2 frames, and then you're putting those in
2 additional frames. Yeah,
it's
not worth it.
Yeah, you're like 70 milliseconds, and it's on. If you're on a mouse and keyboard, it's going to start feeling really gross. On a controller, a lot of that stuff can be kind of blended in. It's can kind of fade away a bit. If we start moving to gyro, then you're going to start feeling it again.
Yeah.
So there's all of these things that you're just trying to combat, right? And they're trying to like reduce latency in the pipeline, so they're trying to do things faster and execute stuff. So how they stage all this stuff is really interesting, and it's like kind of like that thing where DLSS is the Indiana Jones scene where the guy's just like swinging a sword around doing all this stuff, and then Indiana Jones just pulls out a gun and shoots him, right? Like, you're doing all this gymnastics over there. Well, we just need a bigger GPU to really just render this, or you just need to just figure it out, tone things out. But like there are some like Unreal Engine 5 games where I don't know what's going on. It's just I
think it's really going to be dependent on like how the developer builds the game, because there are some games that are so heavy, and you had this kind of like in like the 360 era more than anything, where you had devs just like dumping any bit of data that they weren't using at that right millisecond. And I don't know if development is still kind of like that, where they're just dumping information because they just don't have enough bandwidth. But if a game really takes that to an extreme, and then you have DLSS 4 on with all this fake frames and all this extra stuff, I wonder how that game is going to feel. I wonder if NVIDIA's trickery, smoke and mirrors are going to be able to solve for all of those problems. But hey, we'll see.
Yeah. It's an interesting time, and I don't discount the efforts. And there's some stuff. I don't know if you guys have taken a look at some of the stuff that's going on with like CRT beam simulation. That's another thing. So it's a shader. So are you guys familiar with BFI, black frame insertion?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So imagine the same thing, right? So black frame insertion, you have a frame, and then you have just all black, and then your other frame. And this is to just enhance.
Works really good on OLED screens.
Yeah,
we've shown it also on previous episodes.
So now imagine this. Imagine the same thing, right? So BFI, the one drawback is a reduction in brightness. So now imagine the same thing. So you have a black frame, but you actually have a rolling shutter, like a rolling scan line. So you're almost following the beam, and it does the same things with like phosphor glow and all this other stuff. On an OLED panel, it is truly miraculous to look at how the motion clarity is enhanced as good as BFI is, with none of the brightness reduction. And there's things like that you could use instead of these other upscaling techs. So there's like diverging paths of how we get there. There's some interesting stuff going on in the background too, because it looks like Valve. So Valve, I don't know if you guys know, in GameScope itself, the microcompositor that is on the Steam Deck, this is like 3 years ago, I made like GameScope is the secret sauce to the Steam Deck. And it has grown far beyond even my wildest expectations from that video 3 years ago. Like so basically what it started out as is that you could decouple your input resolution and your output resolution, but you could effectively say, you can inform the game that the input resolution is a monitor that is 640 by 480, even if it's much larger. And the game will say, "Oh, I'm 640 by 480," and it'll just start feeding it 645 480, and then GameScope could then take that image and scale it, do whatever, apply filters like FSR was on there, and so it can do a bunch of stuff. They also have reshade in that part now. So because it has reshade, we can use the CRT beam simulation as a shader for reshade that's on GameScope. So if there is another Steam Deck OLED, we could do CRT beam simulation on a Steam Deck 2, so to speak. And that is going to be huge. So like that is going to be big. Like people can't really grasp what that's going to be like. You have to witness it to see it. But being able to have that on there is going to be super huge. So there's different competing things of like how we can improve. Good.
So just so I understand it exactly, the concept, the picture you're painting here, this would be because of the new technology that's been inserted into it. This would then allow you to do a lot more with a lot less resource overhead.
Yeah. So it's going to be just built as a shader. And if you ever seen like FSR2 and there's like some frizzle around character when you
on the edges,
around, this will mask that more. So this, So you have to really see it to believe it, and it's a wonderful thing. So this is kind of future stuff that is
Xbox. Please call this man. Like, the fact that we aren't like you're making a handheld. Why have you not contacted this man yet? This is insane. If we aren't taking advantage of these technologies. When the Xbox handheld inevitably comes out, I'm gonna be mad. I'm gonna be
Lucius,
mad.
I would actually take issue with that and say, no, don't call this man, because if you do call this man, then he will not be in a position to share some details that he can share right now.
He won't be able to share but he's talking about potential future technology. He's not talking about right. Even if he was underneath Microsoft's pocket for some sort of like advisement situation. He would still be able to tell us about technology.
Sure, about future tech. Yes, absolutely. I get you on that. Okay, so let's reframe this back in what we're seeing right now, right? So what you guys were talking about as far as like how frame generation assists in the feel of a game, right? And latency versus the frames that are produced and how it feels and all of that. What does that do to games like South of Midnight that we're looking at right now, where the game is smooth, it looks seemingly, but it has built-in stop motion, right? So even though it's smooth as butter, some people will feel like, nah, this is not running right. This is herky jerky. I don't like this. You know what I mean? Like, as this technology comes to assist us in running games on things like this, and this is my 1X player X1 Mini, right?
Nice,
right? I have a feeling that this will, just by the very nature of the art style, it may inherently disenfranchise handheld devices. Am I wrong in that? Right? Because in these kind of handhelds, you need as much of that technology as possible to squeeze as much resource overhead from all these things as much as possible. But some of these games inherently kind of offset that by their art style and the way they present their image, right? Like, so for a quick example, if in this instance they do not offer the ability to turn off stop motion, how will that play on this game? I've been talking to Lucius in his historically about other games that we talk about, how we review it and how we feel about it. But just the feel of the game leads so much to your perception of how that game runs that I feel like that might be detrimental to a game like this. Am I wrong?
So it's an interesting question, just from a lot of points of view, that if we were just to entertain this question from leaving the animation, as it is, how the animation is at like a lesser frame rate so that it looks like stop motion, right?
Yeah.
If you have a technology that is smoothing frames in between it and is ignorant of what the art direction is trying to do, you may get something that the soap opera effect of whatever.
That's exactly.
That motion smoothing.
So it's going to be interesting. It may be that when you enable frame generation, that you cannot have the stop motion
on or something. There's some weird side effects that could bring this about.
I have no clue what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. I personally like the stop motion effect. I think it's really cool. I liked it from the beginning. It's not, you know, it's I think it's a love or hate type of thing. I think there are people just like, oh, this is it's almost like trying to, you know, rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time. It just breaks people's
Yeah.
brains. Like they're looking at it and they're
Yes.
just like slowly devolving into a puddle. So
Yeah.
I really like it. I'll see when I start playing it. But you know, the thing about South of Midnight is I love when I look at this game, especially with like the boss fights that we're seeing. They look really
Mhm.
cool. And I'm looking forward to playing it. But Flintlock was a game that I was also looking forward to on Game Pass. And then I started playing Flintlock, and I said this in the podcast just previously as well. But when I
Mhm.
started playing Flintlock, I was going through it, and it was like tons of exposition of like this story that they were trying to build, and I didn't care about anything. And I was just like, "Let's go on with this, guys." And it became this very Dark Souls paint by numbers type of gameplay. That as
Yeah.
I was playing it, I just didn't have any interest in it, and they kept on giving more exposition about this world that I just wasn't feeling at the
Didn't care
moment.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so like I
Yeah.
haven't even gotten into the good part of the gameplay yet, and they just kept on story dumping me, and I'm just like, I eventually just stopped playing it. There's other stuff that was coming out, but that's a worry that I have for South of Midnight is that I hope that it just jumps you straight into it. It gives you a good taste, and it's like one of the things that I was also like God of War, right? God of War. And God of War 2, right? You start off with all, you know, most of your powers and you're swinging and everything, and then all of your powers get taken away from you, and then you have to rebuild it. But you had a moment where you were this being of seeing what you were going to be like at the end of the game, and
Yep. So you can work towards it. Yeah.
yeah, I just want to like have like an understanding of very rapidly of what the game has to offer from the beginning. And I think it's like, so like what Valve does, like in the Valve documentary, they do not do the beginning of the game until the end of the project. So after they've gone ahead and made all the game and know how the game works, then they go back with all the tricks that they've learned, and then they do the beginning and then point out all the things that they've done to you in a way. So like pointing out the physics and all the other stuff. So it's a much better way to have an introduction with all of the greatness of its stuff, like front loaded for you. So I hope that's the case.
To keep you enticed to continue down the
Yeah,
path.
it's like, oh,
when they
I
take it.
see what this is all about. And then whatever happens, if it, you know, they slow it down, they start it, but at least hook me on the gameplay and tell me why I'm going to be interested in this before you start the story dump and the exposition of whatever. I don't know what might be happening there, but it's I often, so like Halo, I didn't care one iota about the story until I finished the game. Once I beat the game, then all of a sudden I became interested in the story. And the story has gone off the deep end by this point with all the different studios and everything else. But like, that's, I don't know, that's my kind of interpretation of it. It's also why I think Dark Souls takes off so well, because there's very little story. Everything's environmental storytelling. Any person that you meet will just give you like a one-liner that's cryptic, and then you're like, well, all right, I guess I'll just go off over there now. So South of Midnight, from what I've seen, the boss fights and everything, I think it looks really super cool. I just hope that they get to hook that really good in the beginning, because I would love nothing more than for that to just to shine as a title. Again, because there's just so much variety that they showed in the developer direct. And so I don't know, I'm really looking forward to it. And this like whole Game Pass year, if you were to go back to like November of when Game Pass of November 2024, you know, Stalker 2, Indiana Jones, next month we have Avowed, you know, this entire span, Game Pass is banging on all cylinders right now. So
indeed,
really,
I completely agree. Yep. And real quick, for those in the chat who are like, hey, I like what I'm hearing. Who is this gentleman? His name is the Fox. Who is he? Where's his YouTube channel? Check it out. I just posted it in the chat right now. When and you guys who've watched the show know that I'm a big supporter. I love handhelds. I love technology. I love getting deep into the speeds and feeds of it all. When I need some handheld goodness, when I need to check out a channel that gives me what I'm looking for, there is one place I go, and that is the Fox's channel. He is excellent when it comes to all manners of technology and helping you understand it and really digging through the details. Like that's my recommendation. If you're not watching, like just like I say, I recommend everyone watch Gamers Nexus for your hardcore gaming content. If it's specifically handheld related, no one does it better than the Fox. So check out
the Fox is the real deal.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And so I wanted to comment. Yes. I wanted to comment on the fact that we're talking about 2025 in Game Pass. Avowed comes out in February. Expedition 33 comes out in April. South of Midnight also April. Doom: The Dark Ages May. Ninja Gaiden 4 sometime in the fall, Call of Duty 2025 in the fall, Outer Worlds 2 sometime in the fall. We have 33 Immortals that is supposed to come out this year. We also have Towerborn that's supposed to come out this year as well. And originally the date for Fable was also 2025, but some people are saying that could move to 2026. At this point, there are so many games that I would not be mad if Fable moves to 2026.
If it moves a little, there's too much in the tank right now.
I just named like 10 games, all pretty high quality, varying from indie, AA, AAA, that we're all going to get inside of Game Pass this year. And those are the things that we know about, right? Those aren't the surprises, the last minute, publisher deals, that sort of stuff. I would say this year is probably the year to pay for Game Pass. If you're gonna pay for Game Pass any year, this year seems insane.
So while we'll continue to have this conversation, I will bring up a chat that was posted that I wanted to save for this specific moment, and that is MJ Dark, who's been a member for 12 months. Thank you, MJ. He says, "How will Switch 2 disrupt the handheld market when it comes to price to performance? How will Chinese handhelds compete in price and value?" God Jima. Yes, that last part we're gonna bypass because he's ridiculous. But it's a very good question by MJ Dark. And while we're having this conversation and we're still seeing an awesome 33 Immortals footage and all that, I'll ask Carrie. I'll ask the Fox first. We now have seen the veil been released on the worst kept secret, which is the Switch 2, right? We've seen it, right? We finally see what it looks like, even though let's be real, we've seen it a long time ago with all the various leaks and stuff. I'm sure you going to CES, you got some hands on with some things that even us have not been able to see with our own eyes. We still don't know the whole picture just yet, but in your thoughts, to MJ's question, how do you think this will disrupt the market, or will it just be status quo? Switch 2 replaces Switch 1 as on top, and we just kind of continue status quo. What are your thoughts?
So I think the Switch 2 is going to be, I think it's going to be monumental for a lot of reasons, because for Switch 1, there was a lot of people that had Switch 1, and I'm not saying everybody, but there's a core group of people that said, okay, the Switch 1 is going to be for my Nintendo games. For other games that I'm seeing, Mortal Kombat 1 or Ark Survival, I'm not going to buy the Switch version of that. I'm going to buy it on PS5. I'm going to buy it on Xbox, PC, wherever. It's not going to be on Switch. And Switch 2 is going to be the moment when all of this changes. So it's hard to determine this. And one of the most important parts of the Switch 2 has not been revealed yet. And I've been speaking loudly on this. And where are the specs on the battery for this thing? No one seems to care. And it seems like it's just voodoo magic to people. But that is going to dictate what this thing is going to be doing in a handheld state. And
your buddy Russ also said, hey, why haven't we seen the back of the dock? It always only shows the front. They haven't shown the back. What does the back look like? Is there something back there we're not supposed to see yet? There's a lot of unknowns. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I talked to Russ about this. He was talking about some eGPU things. I don't believe eGPU is going to be there.
No, too complex of a transition.
Yeah, I just want to see it. I want to see it. If it's not there, show it to us. Why only the front? What are you doing?
Yeah, so it seems like it's likely to be just a fan, so that the fan will duct into the bottom and assist. Because if it's going to upclock considerably, you're going to be pushing 20 watts into something that is more heat. So you're just going to assist the heat on that. So Switch 2, as far as from my point of view, typically in total system power, not TDP, total system power. So this is going to be the package, which is the CPU, GPU, Encore, everything that's there, but then also including the RAM, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, display, everything, right? When you think about it from that angle, I think it's going to be around 8 watts, 10 watts tops. Now, to give you an idea.
That's also what I said. Because if you look at the last Switch and its performance, it was about somewhere between 6 to 8 watts.
Right. So that's original Switch.
Yeah.
Mariko's Switch, total system power is closer to 3 watts total.
Yeah.
TDP is 1.5 watt. So just to give you an idea,
they do magic with nothing.
Yeah, it is incredibly efficient.
Crap.
It's insane.
I don't think people fully appreciate that, because you look at the Switch 1, Mariko one, so the FinFET version, not the Planner edition. The Mariko Switch still has the same 16 watt hour battery. and it's getting 5+ hours of battery life. You cannot do that unless total system power is 3 watts and change. So they're playing, you know, Breath of the Wild and other things, and you can just go on YouTube and see battery life things. You'll just see someone playing Breath of the Wild for 5+ hours, and it's like, wow, that's just easy math. That's 3 watts total. Like there's no if, ands, or buts about that. So Marico's Switch is far more efficient because they went FinFET, but they just lowered clocks to match original Switch. They didn't want up clock it so that it would get same battery life, but then there would be a performance difference, right? So Switch 2 is in an area where if it follows the same trend as the original Switch, right? So original Switch is like 6-7 watts. If we're going to go to 8 watts, which is already high, if we go up to 10 watts, the battery on the cavity of what we saw, I speculated it to be around 20 to 22 watt hour. This will give us around 2 hours, 2.5 hours battery life on the Switch 2. So from that point of view, if we just, all the information we have is like the minimum clocks of the GPU alone is going to be around 4.5 watts. And then the CPUs are actually fairly good. So they're far better than PS4 Pro, Xbox One, right? Yet AMD Jaguar cores
better than the Jaguars. Yep.
Awful, right? They're just terrible. So those A76 cores are going to be very performant. Then we have all the other things. So we have at least DLSS2 that is going to be there. We're going to add like 5 milliseconds to every frame, right? So it's not that much of an increase in any type of latency that you're gonna feel. Effectively, what this all boils down to is that we think about it from this angle, right? If you were to put Steam Deck, which is already very good at low power, if you were to force Steam Deck into an 8 watt or 10 watt total system power scenario, so this is like 5 watt, right? 5 watt TDP, you're going to find that Switch 2 beats the Steam Deck inside this same scope. So from that angle, now I'm not saying that that's going to be all that great, right? Like maybe we're going to be closer to like 7 watt or 8 watt Steam Deck, which is still really good. You have to remember that diminishing return starts hitting on the Steam Deck around 11 watt. So after 11 watt on the Steam Deck, your performance gains start really tapering off. So when you look at it from that angle, I think Switch 2 is going to impress a lot of people. At the same time, there are going to be instances of games where they're not going to do any of the work that is necessary to really highlight and shine. So we may have Mortal Kombat 1, we may have Ark Survival type of visuals where you're just like, oh man, this doesn't look as good as a PS4. But then there are going to be things that are like, oh, that is definitely better. You're going to see Nintendo just put out some spectacular looking things. So I think Switch 2 is going to be a pivot point, which is unfortunate. And I've said this in another podcast because it feels like just as Microsoft could possibly enter a handheld segment, they're going to be in the same situation with the PS4 over again, where everyone starts to build their ecosystem. They're chasing
they're chasing Switch 2 now.
So the ecosystem starts getting built on Switch 2, where Microsoft does not have any response to it yet. And there's a lot at this point. The ship has likely sailed at what I had predicted like a year and change ago at this point, because that was going to be RDNA 4, Zen 5. And now we're firmly into potentially just UDNA, Zen 6, LPDDR6, those types of things, which is nice, which is great because it puts it in a better position. But it also puts them in a bad position because the Switch is going to have a head start.
They're behind the 8 ball again. They're behind the 8 ball again.
Yes, it's a very tough thing. So I think Microsoft really needs to I don't know, just say
speed
something.
up, do something. That's
right. Like on April when Nintendo starts showing this off, Microsoft just like, handhelds coming sometime.
Meanwhile,
I said the same thing when Valve announced their initiative to basically bring the Steam OS to other hardware, right? I was like, come on, Microsoft. I know you're not ready.
But that's what they did.
We know you're not ready.
They sent Jason Ronald to tap dance in front of everybody and not present any. Like the man just went up there, had a couple conversations with a few people, and we love Jason Ronald here, but at the end of the day, they sent him out there as a defense measure. They knew that Steam Deck, like Steam OS, was now going to more handhelds. They dragged their feet on figuring out a proper solution for Windows handhelds, and they sent our man's Jason Ronald out there to
go out there and
for CES, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
And
I was hoping there'd be more of an announcement. There wasn't, but it is what it is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Real quick, there are a couple chats here while we're having this great conversation. The awesome Soil Tech with a $2 super chat. He says, "Do you do all your videos in one take, Carrie?"
Yes.
Because man, oh man,
Yeah, I
you
do.
know what you're doing.
And
One
there's-
take.
One take, no scripts. I mean,
Wow.
there's problems in there. Like I have to edit around them, but I do
Sure.
it all in one take. And
But you do
there's
the
no
whole
script.
one thing.
Yeah, no script.
That's
all
that's
one
cool.
take.
That's cool.
Oy, that's
Gary,
crazy.
I did want to ask you one question
Go ahead.
about efficiency because I've heard you say this so many times, and there's a part of me that's just like, there's been too many examples for us not to at least think this naturally. You say that there is no fundamental difference when it comes to efficiency for x86 and ARM, because everybody says, oh, you know, you got to go ARM, and you always push back on that and say, hey, you know, x86 can get just as efficient X, Y, and Z. But now we're talking about games running on the Switch, the Miracle Switch, at like 1.5 watts when Intel and AMD chips don't even wake up
Right.
at that, right? So how can you square that circle when you say that it can be just as efficient when we see examples with Apple and with Nintendo doing literal miracles?
Sure. So yeah, it's all about design of what the chip is supposed to be. If you take a look at what like Intel had their inline Atom CPUs, right? Those things sipped power as well. So it's all in the intent of what is the accomplishment of what you're trying to do. But this puts a ceiling in terms of whatever the performance you're trying to target. If you're trying to target the low end, you're going to have a closer ceiling, whereas for the other chips, they're going to start where the other one ends, right? So then they have a lot more room to grow. Ultimately, when you try to scale up ARM, and you try to outdo x86, ARM then starts taking a look like as similar to x86. Not completely. ARM does really good in single threaded, unless so like the Snapdragon X Elite laptop chip where they had the Windows on ARM thing. That single threaded wise was fantastic. You basically can do half power and do the same single threaded workload. That is fantastic. But when you take a look at multi-threaded workload, when you start adjusting clocks and stuff, all of a sudden you can achieve the same result in so far as total system power. So it's not really, now we're comparing apples to oranges here, right? But ultimately what it comes down to is that if we were to kind of hold Apple's silicon to a standard and say, oh, that's ARM. That's not ARM. That's super awesome ARM. That's like, the pinnacle of ARM technology. That's ARM so good that the business unit forgot to stop the engineers. Like that, literally, when you take a look, the M1 came out, what, 2020?
Yeah, the M1 is too good.
Yeah.
It's so good that people aren't upgrading.
Exactly. They're not upgrading. That's like, when they were like, okay, let's make the M2 and say, hey guys, why aren't we selling the M2? And it's like, oh yeah, about that. We did
the M1 is really good. That's right. Yeah.
When people got the M1, they were like, oh, this is amazing. And then when they saw the M2, they're like, well, why do I need this? And the problem is that we're in that segment of why does Intel and AMD need to do that when they have to sell you something next year? If they have to sell you something next year, the business unit comes in and says, oh, engineers, slow down. And you take a look at all the specs. Take a look at 780M. Take a look at 880M. Take a look at the 890M in Strix Point, right? You have 16 CUs that go at 2.9 gigahertz.
Yeah.
That's insane. The amount of power that we have in there. And then they just were like, oh, here's 128-bit wide channel and feed that somehow.
God. Yes.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, here's your Ferrari engine. It's totally there, but here's your coffee straw to feed it with gasoline.
To feed it.
And it's like, okay, guys, can you make that a little wider? And it's like, nope, no, we cannot. But the compute is fantastic, and that's where we find ourselves, and that's where Xbox still finds themselves having an avenue because Microsoft can make their own silicon, right?
Will they pay for it though?
Well, it's getting more expensive. It is getting more expensive. And ultimately, this seems to be almost a foregone conclusion. Who knows what's going on? Microsoft still says they're going to be making hardware. If they're still going to be making hardware, they should.
Do you not believe them when they say that?
I don't believe anything. I know what you
believe, Lucius. I want to know what the Fox believes. I know what you believe, sir.
They can say one thing 1 minute, and then the business side of the equation.
Realities change. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't believe anything they say anymore.
Do you believe there's another console coming beyond what we know is coming in 2026? Do you think that they are still in the hardware business, Kerry?
So this is a question that I would have to layer with: is Game Pass numbers? aligning with X amount in game. Like if Xbox Series consoles, the amount of people that have that, say it's 50%, some number, right? If Game Pass subscribers are using that on an Xbox up to 50%, I say yes. If they go down to like 10 or 20%, then I think Microsoft just washed their hands of it and says, yeah, okay, if people are on Game Pass subscribing and they're doing on PC or whatever, then at some point that number, the money guys are going to come in and say, hey guys,
the juice isn't worth the squeeze at this point. Yeah.
And I think that's all that it really comes down to. And as much as we would like them to do it, but they can't come to a hardware game without having compelling hardware. And more to the point is, it's very expensive right now, especially going to these newer nodes. The good point of where we find the whole whiz-biz nonsense that's going on from AMD side, where they have laptop chips and they're saying, here, use that in your handheld. And it's like, I don't need 12 CPUs. And
Strix Halo really disappointed me because I'm like, why do we have 16 CPU cores in here?
It's a strange. So Strix Halo, I still can't talk about just yet. But
interesting.
It's fascinating. It is so everything that I had said, if you go back to my original Xbox video, is mostly correct. So take that as you will, but it can go down pretty far. But the thing is that 40 CUs is a lot of GPU.
It's nuts. Yeah. It's too much for a handheld.
So what the reality of that is that even at its lowest clocks, and you are demanding it to work, that it takes a bare minimum of power, including CPU and on-core and stuff.
Yeah.
The good news about Strix Halo is that it is not heterogeneous cores like it is on Strix Point. So Strix Point, you have the bifurcated efficiency cores and performance cores.
Yes.
In Strix Halo, you have full fat Zen 5 cores, all of them. So that means, as insofar as Windows is concerned, all of the EPP schemes that you can use will apply. So in Strix Point, if you mess with EPP outside of 90, you're going to have bad performance. It basically just needs to be 90, 24H2. It's kind of a mess. Strix Point is a mess on Windows, and I do have a video coming out hopefully Monday where we can show off
so versus with Windows. That, I have to bring this up real quick. Shout out to the great MJ Dark, $10 super chat. He says, how come Strix Point, not Halo, he corrected me in the DMs that he said Strix Point doesn't seem that exciting, and why are we seeing the price is so ridiculous? Should 7840U and 8840U owners wait till 2026? Will the Z2 be based off of the HX365? Switch is the best, he says. Sure. What do you think of that? Like we were waiting for Strix Point. We were so excited for it. Oh, it's next gen. And so far, the price seems to be very much in that next gen realm, but the performance and the excitement seems to be lacking. And he's wondering if we should just kind of hold off on this Strix Point stuff. What do you think?
So I tried. If you see, like, there's one word that I always try to bring up is set expectations. This is a thing that I will say often is let's take a pause and kind of really just get out of the voodoo of it. So Strix Point has multiple problems. Number one is it is essentially their first mobile APU that has heterogeneous cores. There's P cores and E cores, meaning the scheduler on Windows did need to get updated. If you're on Windows 11 23H2 versus 24H2, performance is wildly different between the two, and 24H2 is superior. Having said that, on Linux side, the CPU schedulers treat it even better. So from an operating system point of view, Microsoft is behind the 8 ball for Strix Point. So that is going to exacerbate not having any real reason to go to Strix Point at all. So the Z2E, if Microsoft doesn't fix anything, when we compare these, if you look at only high wattages, you're going to see a difference. But if you kind of take a step back and go to 10 watt, 15 watt, 20 watt, the differences are going to start blurring per game. And I actually showed this off. I did a GPD Win Mini review, compared the 8840U to Strix Point, and there's give and take. And if you look at the $300 of extra cost, you have to wonder why you would want that. So at the current moment, Strix Point is something that excels in Linux and SteamOS area, and that's something that I would say if you're going to get it, at the moment kind of be in that realm. If you wanted to use Game Pass, don't get Strix Point at this moment.
Windows holding back gaming again. Would you look
Yeah,
at that?
yes. Once you see the benchmarks, it's going to be pretty clear that we, especially like Cyberpunk, is like a canary in the coal mine type of thing, because Cyberpunk does have a lot of CPU dependency in terms of trying to extract the most performance out of it, and the difference between even like 10 watts, so 10 watt to 10 watt, right? You're getting 30% better performance on Bazite versus Windows, same system. So that 30% difference is huge, because that's what you should be seeing on the low end. Now, the benefit of Strix Point is that it's 16 CUs versus 12 CUs on 8840U. One thing that I had said early on was there is a benefit from going wide and slow. So if you have more GPU and you can run at a lower frequency, that is better than going to less wide
Smaller
and
bandwidth and faster. Yeah.
So you take a look at the PS5 versus the Xbox Series X, right? If you take a look at it, the Xbox Series X is like 15% more render throughput. What Sony did with the PS5 is that they have far less CUs, but then they upclocked it to 2.3 gigahertz, 2.23 gigahertz, and the Xbox Series X is at what, 1.8 gigahertz. So the frequency is 500 megahertz difference. So PlayStation is making up the difference by ramping up power. Now, mind you, in terms of just render, right? Like compute, Xbox Series X is about 15% better. However, the PlayStation 5 uses 15% more power. So you have to understand that as you ramp up frequency, the power increases, right? So if in a handheld, you want to try to balance having a wide enough GPU that you can run at super low power in a handheld state, but still, if you have the bandwidth feed it, you're going to have a better efficiency in terms of graphical fidelity at a certain power throughput.
So let's talk theoretical numbers. Are we saying like a 16 or 20 CU device that has 256-bit wide bus, runs relatively low frequency, and then when you put it in a dock, it can go up to like 60, 80 watts or something like that if it has the necessary cooling. And now it's taking advantage of all 16 or 20 CUs, and it has a very wide bus to actually push that data.
That is correct. Yeah. So Strix Halo, I can demonstrate this. What's interesting is that AMD does some really fascinating things when you go down in power, and there are bandwidth considerations that I will highlight as well. But AMD does this automatically now with Strix Halo. So it's a foregone conclusion if Microsoft can do this. But basically, everything I said back in my original Xbox video of saying, do 256-bit wide, go low power, wide and slow, and just tweak memory, I was saying do it manually. AMD's doing it automatically. So they are already doing that. But then, bandwidth just basically scales down to what we find now. So in the 780M and stuff. So you have the same type of bandwidth when you just push it really low. However, 40 CUs is just too wide. So 16 to 20 CUs really is like the ideal. But yeah, you're definitely in an area where you can 100% run Series S games in a handheld state. And then when you docked it, especially if we're talking about Zen 6, UDNA, LPDDR6, now you're in a scenario where it's easier to hit switch Series S in a handheld state and then surpass Series S by a considerable margin when docked.
I think we spoke about this before you came here, actually before the show even started, while we were in the green room. We made this comparison, and I want to know if it's accurate. The PS3 to PS4. The PS3 was technically stronger than the PS4 in some capacities. That cell processor could go really far if you knew how to like play around with it. But the PS4 being more, it's x86, more standardized. There are different newer technology sort of thing that you can take advantage of in comparison. So despite the fact that the PS3 was on paper can be stronger, the PS4 far surpassed it when it came to like the sort of output that you were able to see on the screen. Is that something that we could see with the Xbox Series S and X versus the new handheld, could the new handheld be technically weaker in some ways, but via the use of many different technologies and things, we could get outputs that are better.
Yeah.
Similar, if not better. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of things that you have to consider here. So just from a straight standpoint, right? Zen 2 is old at this point, and for Zen 5, we can match. If we do, all right, so Zen 2, all the consoles, right, even Steam Deck, they cap out at 3.5 gigahertz. So there's a reason for this. There's no like collusion for it. It's just an efficiency point. So at 3.5 gigahertz, 4 cores, 15 watt, 8 cores, 30 watt. Simple. Now to match that performance threshold, right, to just achieve what that's doing, Zen 5 can do that in around 7 watt, 8 watt. So a significant reduction in achieving the same amount, right? So there are some play that we have to do there. Now, there are some other things that Microsoft does for their emulation side of things, where they do have some other things that are there. But now, Zen 2 did not have AVX 512 instructions, the SIMD set, right? That is now present in Zen 4 and Zen 5, and not for nothing, that works fantastic. It's dual issue, it's double pumped, so it's two 256 that go into 512. But when you do, it's one clock per operation. So if you do this 512-bit thing, it'll get it done in one operation, one op. So that is a thing that they could 100% leverage for that. That would supersede anything the Series S, Series X, PS5, PS5 Pro could do on the CPU end. So there's things like that are baked into Zen. Now, I don't think that they would decouple that specifically, but there's those types of SIMD set that would be available to them that would be very beneficial in gaming.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now we hope they use these features, because that tends to be what tends to be our problem. We here on the outside say there's so much technology you could bring to bear here, but then ultimately they don't do that, and we're left holding pitchforks. It is
like the amount of technological things that they spoke about during the Series S and X launch. And it's not to say that those things aren't real. It's just to say that no developers.
They were just never really used. Yeah, they were never really brought to bear. Yeah.
A couple have used direct storage. A couple have used variable rate shading. But
it's not a standard at all. Yeah, so you never see it brought to bear in a real way. Yeah,
I don't think we'll ever really see the full capability of the Series S and X because of that. Like nobody's going to take advantage of these technologies fully. Even
Microsoft's own devs have not fully taken advantage. I think the only one I can point to this very day that has really done it is Remedy with Alan Wake 2. They're the ones you can say, yeah, that game took advantage of all the hardware possible in order to get it to working right.
I'll let you say this, but I'll talk in a minute. You can go to the chat,
please. Oh, okay, thank you. So real quick, Captain Chats, £10 super chat. Thank you so much, Captain Chats. He says, pound super chat. He says, great to see the Fox. Just came across interesting interview within the project manager of the Lenovo regarding the Go 2. He'll post the link in the chat. I'm sure, Kerry, you've been watching all the moving and shaking of the Go 2. Did you get your hands on it by any chance? And if you did, what do you think?
No, I haven't gotten my hands on it just yet. I am in contact with Lenovo talking about it. So I don't know if they're going to send me anything just yet. Regardless, I'll have to just buy the Steam version of it. I suppose I could just get the Windows version of it. Effectively, what they have is a super Steam Deck. So they have a 4-core version of the 6800U. So it is still RDNA 2, but you still have 12 CU and you still have all that frequency to spare. So there are going to, if effectively we're back in the same realm of like when 6800U devices first came out. But we have the benefit of only having 4 CPU cores, which should have a better balance of power internally. So we should see it scale down a fair bit more. So in terms of performance, you're still going to be bound. We are heavily GPU bound in all handheld scenarios. We have so much CPU that it's rather
unnecessary
ridiculous.
Usually.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous how much CPU we have. So when you look at it from that point of view, the end result is that you should only expect about 30% better performance in any real metric because you can upclock, right? You can upclock and spend it in power. Now you can get better power in terms of that 4-core CPU arrangement. So maybe instead of pushing 28 watt to get 30% better than 15 watt Steam Deck, maybe you're in like 24 watt, maybe you're in 23 watt, somewhere in that area, just hypothetically saying, right? Like that you'll be able to do that, which is a nice trade-off, right? If you're saying, okay, I'm spending 7 more watts and I get 30% more performance, seems like it's good. But when you have to buy a whole new device to just get 30% more performance and you have to spend more power to get there, I don't know if that's very great. I think the $500 version that they're selling makes a lot of sense for the Steam OS version. At $500, that becomes, especially if you don't have a Steam Deck yet, it's like, oh, okay, that's not bad. That's pretty good. So I think the price is compelling for the Steam OS version. The price for the Windows version doesn't make any real sense.
Not so, right? Not so compelling. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a weird mix that they have going. I'm very happy with them going to the native landscape VRR OLED.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'm selfishly like that because GPD sourced Asus's panel for the GPD Win Mini. So all of the things that Asus did, I got to have in other devices. So even if like One X player, right? Like they're probably going to be able to source this 8.8-inch landscape native.
That is the one thing that is so disappointing. This is still a landscape screen, a portrait screen.
Yeah,
and it's although AFMF2 is able to still work on it. I'm still now with later drivers, we are still getting past it. But the fact that it's not native landscape, it's still a pain in the butt.
Windows just really, it just will conk out when you just, not all the time. Modern games, they handle it a lot better, but older games, you have to fix them all the time. From a Windows point of view, you can accomplish things, but it's not very intuitive for the user. And even the original Lenovo Legion Go was a native portrait panel. It looked fantastic, but it had all those same types of issues. So that's an area where running SteamOS makes a lot more sense because GameScope is going to fix that for you internally all the time anyway. Those are the types of things that those inside baseball type of stuff that I always bring up, and people always like, we
love that stuff around here. We love that stuff. This is the stuff here's where we live. We love that speed and feeds talk around here. So that stuff is very important to us.
So I'm selfishly looking forward to that, just to see it in other devices that are maybe not the Lenovo Legion Go 2, but the Lenovo Legion Go 2, I really love what Lenovo did with the Joy-Con like behavior, making that work. They're still the only one that did that, so it's a nice entry point for people that, believe it or not, there's people that just like want to detach those controllers, not to like use them, but to have their machine as like
to
a
have
tablet.
It sit back and then you hold on. The one thing I'll say, if you're a Lenovo Legion Go fan, when you're traveling, having controllers you can decouple, and the same thing here, having controllers you can decouple and put it in a little Joy-Con. Now you have your AR headset, glasses on. This thing is not in your hand, and you got a controller, and you're watching your game on your huge monster screen without having this in your hand. It's an actual benefit. It really is
for sure.
Cool.
It's cool. How they done everything is fantastic. But ultimately, we're still at this point now. I've been in this for a real long time, so this is very familiar territory for me. To give you an idea, so I was looking at PC gaming handhelds from 2016 when GPD made the first Win 1, right? And that was running Intel Atom. And that was a very, very low-powered platform. But I still got it.
I used to run a bunch of Atom processor stuff too. I know where you're coming from. Yeah.
So it's funny because
with the X1 Tegra chip in the GPU space, it was crazy. It was a crazy time.
There was only a few things that you can get to, and so this whole space has really blown up a lot. But then we went to the 7Y30 Core M3 on Intel, and that really helped us out a lot. In 2017, right? And then for 2017 to about 2021, that was all that existed. For 4 years, we basically had nothing. 2020, then Ice Lake came out. So then the GPU Win Max came out. And then we had like a doubling of performance, but doubling power, which wasn't ideal. And then, Vega came out. But AMD Vega, AMD Renoir, so the 4500U, 4800U, that generation, that was around for like 4 years. And now when you look at RDNA 2 and RDNA 3 isn't really all that much better. RDNA 3.5 does have some benefits, but we're still smired in this very RDNA 2-ness of a type of GPU. And that's the best that we have. So it feels like since 2022, we've had basically the same performance 3 years
over and over again.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's all we're doing. We're just kind of reiterating the same thing because we have not had UDNA. Well, we were hoping that RDNA 4 was going to do it, but we still don't know what's going on with RDNA 4. So now the new target is UDNA, and hopefully UDNA is a new architecture that gets more done within the same power scope. So there's things that is like a hope of what we're going to accomplish outside of an architectural, a microarchitecture improvement where we can get a greater performance per watt. The only next step that we can do is things that I said in my Xbox video, the Xbox Handheld video, is where we just try to balance every part as much as we can. Just enough CPUs, just enough GPU, and we clock these at very specific settings inside different scopes. And that's you're just min-maxing whatever it can do inside of that scope. More to the point, and the thing I wanted to bring up before, so when we talk about performance, right, we take a PS3, PS4, and all this other stuff. One of the things that happened, because PS5 is effectively RDNA 1, right? It's not RDNA 2. So there are things that are missing from the PlayStation side. But one thing that they did do is they made RDNA 1 very RDNA 2 like. So RDNA 2, when we take a look at CROPs, right? Like color render operations. When we take a look at that, it's dual issued on RDNA 2. On RDNA 1, single issued. So what Sony did was they just doubled the amount of them. They went ham on it. So they doubled the CROPs on it, but because they doubled it and it's running at a higher frequency, effectively the fill rate on the PS5 is around 20% better than the Xbox Series X. Then they also did DROPs, depth. They didn't just double it, they quadrupled it, which is ridiculous. I don't even know what they're doing with all those depth drops. But the only thing I could speculate was for PSVR 2 reasons. But I have no idea. But so like they went ham on a lot of things, and they spent the die space on PS5. So it has better fill rate than Xbox Series X. So there's like things that they can do on a physical level. Here's what we can
overshoot their potential capabilities. Yeah,
exactly. Just because what we have today does not mean that they have to use those same things. They can take those building blocks and build on top of them. They can use more exotic types of RAM solutions. They can use different caches. So there's things that they can do that are not technically available to us that can fill the gap. So there's interesting things that engineers can do when they're presented a solution. So like we see like the same thing, like Sony's already working on the PlayStation 6, right? And they're talking about UDNA and all this other stuff. So that's how early on that they actually do start doing things. And the PS5 was in development earlier on than the Xbox Series X, which is why Xbox Series X had RDNA 2 and PS5 did not. The design was finalized before. So
earlier than
So you just look at it, and the initial rumors was that PS5 was like 8 teraflop or 9 teraflop, and then at the 11th hour they just cranked up frequency on that GPU and closed the gap a lot. And for a lot between that acceleration of GPU with that fill rate that they're getting there is going to be so color blending and alpha blending and all that other stuff. All that stuff, you're going to see the PS5 win out in some games that are not leveraging VRS and all the other stuff, because they are older type of things that are just leveraging that type of stuff. So that's where you're seeing PS5 often winning in a lot of situations. But
what myself and Everborn were talking similarly about this specific situation is, yes, it's true that Xbox brought a lot of interesting tools to bear, but PlayStation being the market leader and having a specific way of design that's already established and well established with developers, the developer, as a matter of business, will go there first.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Which means all the great features that Xbox has, you'll probably never see it used because it's not worth their while to use them when the market leader is very comfortable in the way their development processes are, and that you as a developer from a business perspective can get far more out of it, and you know it because you've used it a long time.
And it's only recently that you've really seen the Series X. Series X's power really start being used. I saw with Space Marine 2. I played that on my Series X, and I was like, man, this looks great. This runs very well.
They said it's about 20% more performant on Xbox than it is on PlayStation with like-for-like
and then when they
scenarios,
compared the PS5 Pro version to the Xbox Series X version, the PS5 Pro version was only getting like maybe 2 frames more. 3%
more performant than the original Xbox version.
And you're just like, wow, it really kind of puts into perspective like how strong the Series X is, and what they provide
when used correctly.
When used correctly.
Yeah, so like work graphs is like a newer paradigm that came into it. Work graphs is a thing that the developers can use, and RDNA 2 is something that can leverage work graphs. And as far as I'm aware, RDNA 1 cannot. So work graphs is an optimization type of thing that can be leveraged for developers. But again, that's more to your point, right? Is like, because Sony is the market leader in console and they have a lot of headspace there. One advantage that Sony really does have is that if they were to make a PlayStation handheld, they don't even need to care that they have a Series S target that they could like leverage. They could just say, "Hey, developers, make it run."
This is
and
it.
then they're like,
Make it run, and everybody will do it.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
they have
That's
that
right.
advantage.
Yes.
So again, that's a thing where you could totally see a PlayStation handheld coming, even if they didn't have a Series S PlayStation, right? They could just have the developers just like, like, okay, well, we got to make this happen. So they're going to patch it, do whatever, put in the work.
What you're describing is the reason, like, whenever I hear people complaining, well, the devs are saying the Series S is hard to develop for. I'm like, but you don't hear them saying that the Switch 1 is hard to develop for. It is the market leader. So no matter how pretzeling they have to do in order to make it work, they shut their mouths and they make it work because there's so many people playing there. When you are a Series S and not as many people presumably are playing where you are, then you hear devs complaining. Is it difficult? Maybe, but I would not think that the Series S is far more difficult to develop for than, say, a Switch. But you don't hear anybody complaining about developing for the Switch because that's where the game is, right? That's where you hear them talk in great numbers about how wonderful they were able to make this impossible port. All that energy that went into that is seen and lauded and commended, whereas on the other side they say, this was too difficult for us to develop for. That is just the difference between the market leader and one that is not, right? Obviously, if they were in a better position, you wouldn't hear complaints. You'd hear people developing for it gladly because that's where all the gamers are. And right now, I love the Series S. I have a Series S and I have a Switch as well. But I feel like, and Kerry, please tell me if I'm mistaken here. I feel like because of where it is in the market position, it will never be used as well as it could have been. Am I wrong in that?
It's you're not necessarily wrong. It's there. Everything has to scale down, right? And scaling down, there are methods to do that, and further than just what game settings would allow you to have, right? They can do a lot more scaling in terms of level of detail, how far they're rendering something out in terms of distance where you are. So there's lots of things that they could do that could assist them in trying to. They could make their own developer sliders, right? Of like, oh, we're going to have this much being drawn at any given thing. If they have to manually go in there, it could be painful. It could be painful if they have to manually, like, they have this base set and now they're paring down things and they're running like, oh, this is now not running, and now they're trying to figure out what they have to cull or move. Or it can be a problem, and because it isn't a market leader, it becomes just a thing that no one wants. It
becomes a pain point.
Yeah,
that everybody complains about. That's right. Yeah.
Now, I mean, from my point of view, there's been lots of things about it said. So Jez, when I said the Series S, so in 2020, right? 2020, the Series S and the Series X get announced. And on Resetera, I made a post. It's like, I think this is a Trojan horse for things to come. Just because when I was looking at it, I was like, why do they have the GPU clock so low? Why is all of this, like, it's plugged into power? Why is this using so little?
Why is it artificially limited for no reason?
Exactly. Yes. Sony decided to do it. They said, hey, let's just boost up that GPU frequency to catch up to the Series X. And they did. So at what point does Microsoft not just push more power? The heatsink can handle it. The power supply is over-engineered on the Series X. It's like 150 watt power supply. It takes like 82 watts. So they could scale up. They could easily scale up, but they chose not to. And it's a very arbitrary number that, from all outside appearances, looks kind of weird. So at the point that I was in 2020, I'm using devices that I can hit 1 teraflop, not comparative, but I mean, like, I could see, I'm looking at 2020, I'm using something that's taking 15 watts and getting comfortable 1 teraflop of use. And I'm looking at that and I see 4 teraflops, and I'm like, in like 4 years, I think that they can hit that, because I was also using Vega at the time. I'm using Tiger Lake chips. I'm not even using RDNA 2. I'm not even using, so I'm like, okay, this generation is coming, and then the next generation. If we take a look at that, all of the process nodes, I'm like, this to me feels like a starting point to get into a position to have a handheld, because I think, especially when you think about like how long they have to plan these things in advance, right? Like if Sony is already talking about UDNA and Zen 6. Now we hear this now. That's the what 2027, 2028. So it's 2-3 years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a look at when the Switch launched and took off, that's 2017. That means that Microsoft is already working on the Series X and Series S and Series X, right? Or Series X at least. And then they see Switch, and then they're like, "Oh man, we would like to have a handheld, but how do we do that?" They can only start the ground layer. They can only start the foundation then and there if they wanted to. If Phil Spencer is like, we got beat up on the PS4 because we didn't have the library there. No one built it there, and Game Pass is a method of getting people up to speed instantly. So there's all these things that I have no idea. I'm completely speculating. No one told me any of this, but I'm like, the dude that's like has a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff on the back end of wires going all over the place.
We call them tinfoil koofies. Continue, sir. Go ahead.
That's my total headspace. I'm just trying to see through the matrix here, right? Is when I look at all this stuff, it just seems like, well, that's arbitrary. And like, if that happened in the past and whatever's going there, there's just things that just felt to me like they were gearing up for a handheld. Now, Jez said actually what they were doing was to have a lower target for their cloud platform so that they could make, that they could leverage, they can bifurcate the system that they have so that they can run multiple instances on a single.
They can run 2 instances on a Series X that are basically 2 Series S instances.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So they just bifurcate that stuff. So that's that. Like, okay, yeah, I buy that as well. But I submit that there is a real world scenario where all of the work that devs didn't really like putting in the work for the Series S is going to pay dividends for them if an Xbox handheld does come out. So, I mean, for me, I don't care which way, one way or the other, that this ends. I'm largely a PC gamer at this point. I started moving over to PC gaming in 2010. I actually left Xbox in 2010. I did not start using Xbox again until Game Pass in 2020, literally 2020. The reason I got an Xbox Series X is because of a Game Pass. There you go. Yeah, so I was huge on the 360, but that from 2000 to 2010, PC was in this weird nebulous space of weirdness, right? PS2 was dominating, so everyone was moving over there, and then 360 just took off, was just a fantastic system, and everything was coming out there. And I remember when I saw Oblivion on trailer, I was like, I'm getting a 360, I'm getting Oblivion.
It's a wrap. It's over.
So once all of that was there, it was I was full on console. And in the 90s, I was half and half. I played PC adventure games all the time. So if it was a Sierra game, I was playing Sierra games. If it was LucasArts games, I was playing LucasArts games on PC. So Day of the Tentacle, Full Throttle, Space Quest, King's Quest, those types of games I would be playing on PC. And then as the adventure genre died, everything on PC seemed to
die with it.
So Diablo 2 was all I played. Diablo 2 is all I played in 2001. And then in 2004, it was everyone, if you had a PC and you gamed on it, it was because of World of Warcraft and nothing else. And that
everything else was console-ified, if you will.
Yeah.
There were a few PC-centric stuff, but everything else was console-ified.
Yeah, it was like esports, right? So you had Counter-Strike. You played Counter-Strike or World of Warcraft and nothing else. PC was 2 games essentially. 4 games, but it wasn't where it was, you know what I mean? And then when 2010 came around and Steam sales started coming around, and I was like, oh, I can buy all of Square Enix's games for $50. All right. So I just started buying THQ Pack and everything else. So I was in for $800, and I had hundreds of Steam games, PC games. And I was like, man, this is fantastic. And at that time in 2010, when they started moving over to Connect, and I really feel again, I have no insight here, but speculation, what I see, the whole conspiracy theory thing is the suits at Microsoft saw how cool Xbox was, and they wanted a piece of that action. You had all the people that were hardcore gamers that had created Xbox and Xbox 360, and then the suits came in, and 2010, Don Matrix and Balmer just. They were looking at the Wii, trying to copy that, really changing what they were doing, and just leaning on third parties because that's where everyone was. All their friends played on Xbox 360, so Call of Duty and all those other ones, and it was just rinse and repeat type of thing. And they lost their way, in a big time. Now, again, another conspiracy theory. I'm going way on the deep end here.
Let's go.
AT&T, the mobile carrier, number 2. They're like, you know what we need to do? We need to buy DirecTV, because everyone's going to TV. And this is the time when everyone's cutting cords. Everyone's
Yeah.
like,
I
I'm
remember this
cutting,
time, yeah.
yeah, I'm cutting cable. So AT&T, a company that has nothing to do with Microsoft, zero.
Yeah.
They're going hardcore in TV in 2013. What does Microsoft do with Xbox? TV. Like, who? How are these two companies like TV? Like, it makes no sense. Like,
They saw the future.
yeah, they both. There's two CEOs. They're like, "Oh, he's doing TV. We're gonna do TV," and it was such a misfire, and everything. The
You know
Xbox,
what's even more confusing about that entire situation is that Xbox. You could say that Xbox really helped Netflix thrive because Xbox were the ones who
Netflix's
created
business model.
Yeah,
they built
the ones
it.
who created the Netflix app, the first one, because Netflix wanted to still stick to like DVDs, and Microsoft was like, no. We're seeing the telemetry. People are essentially putting the DVDs into our consoles too much. We don't like that. You need to create some sort of thing that allows you to be able to, like, do this.
Real quick, Lucius, I will pat myself slightly on the back, because where that came from is hypothetically, there were certain things happening on the OG Xbox. I'll say XBMP, I'll say XBMC, which eventually turned to Kodi, that showed Microsoft that their handheld, their device, was being used far more effectively for entertainment than they themselves were offering. There's rumor that one of these devices that were, little tweaking and twerking had been done to it, ended up on one of the CEO's desk and went, "Hey, this is what these people are doing with your device. Maybe you guys should be the ones offering it." That's what turned the 360 into the 360 you see today. And in a small, teeny tiny sense, I was part and parcel of that original thing. I'm telling you, we, as in the guys who kind of did a little bit of this, a little bit of that with that OG Xbox, turned the 360 into what you eventually saw, which ended up turning Netflix into what they became. And now you see these multi-use devices that are all over the place. It started with that OG Xbox that people hacked entertainment into.
I say all of that to say, you guys were the ones, like, by you guys I mean Xbox. Xbox were the ones who cultivated this entire streaming-based entertainment ecosystem, and you see all of that, and you are the person who, like, brought it from the cradle to where it is now, and then you think,
and they still don't get any credit for it.
Well, no. And you think to yourself, I'm gonna go with traditional television. What?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. They should have gone further in that direction, because they had the future by the hand, like they had it, and then they let it go. And now, of course, what did we see recently in PlayStation's announcements? A lot of TV talk, right? They waited until the ground was seeded, and now there's a lot of TV talk.
Cross media is huge now.
Yeah.
So one thing, I'm real big on this, and I'm a stickler for it, and maybe I'm just like too nerdy to. So anyway, the Halo TV series was a blight for me. Like them making an adaptation, making a team.
You didn't like Master Cheeks?
The Team Blue that they had made.
Stop it.
There was another universe that they made, and they did not follow the canonical Halo series.
Yeah, it's a different universe. It's an Elseworld story.
When Todd Howard comes along and like he's like, "Oh, we're gonna make the Fallout TV series, but it's canon. Whatever happens in the TV series happens in the Fallout universe." That is a critical choice, and it makes me want to watch that TV show, because whatever happens in that TV show is going to be happening in the game.
Matters.
Yeah. So you have to have your Bible of whatever the lore is. And for Halo, I read the books. When I beat the game, I got huge. Like, you see all the Halo stuff I have back. I'm a huge Halo fan.
I too am a huge Halo fan. Yes, absolutely.
So
yes.
I got into the lore. I started reading The Fall of Reach, and I was like, oh man, I read the book. And so I'm like doing it. I'm like, I have the backstory to it, and I'm like really enjoying it. And then they just start going off in different places, and then they're like, "Well, the books are not."
And then they give you Master Cheeks, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they basically, the rule was whatever the game says is canon, and anything else that is done is not. And if at any point it's like, okay, so all the books that I invested in and loved are now effectively fan fiction. Why am I going to invest my time and effort into liking these stories when they don't effectively matter? Like, I know that's like, it's all fiction, right? So if someone makes it up and someone else, what does it matter? Well, I want to have one story in my head. So it's like when you see like Game of Thrones, the book and the TV series, and the ending of that TV series, no one talks about Game of Thrones anymore because they just destroyed that entire series.
They destroyed the ending. That's right.
Yeah. So like they had all that build up to just ended on like one episode each. And all of this is like in the same type of vein, right? If you're going to have something, what I hope that Sony does when they have all these properties that they're making in the movie and stuff is they really hammer home whatever you see on those things are canon in the same thing.
It's canon across the board. Yeah.
Last of Us is basically, mostly one to one for whatever happened. Right? Like there's parts that, but you're still following along and go, oh yeah, that happened. And my wife doesn't play those games, but she watched the TV show with me and she really enjoyed the TV show. So I really think that that's a great avenue that they're going down, and it's something that we should celebrate. I just hope that
I agree.
I just hope that we get past this point of, I really hate when they get a property and they're like, we're going to make an adaptation, I'm going to put my spin on this, and it's like, I don't want your spin on this, I want his spin on it, and you do the work. Like
we feel like for a long time until recently, Hollywood always appreciated those IPs, but when you give them those IPs, then they go, okay, you did great work, now sit down and let us Hollywood types take it over.
Exactly.
And what you end up getting there is a watered down story that does not like keep the core of why you loved that IP in the first place.
I will never
took someone like Sony. Go ahead.
I will never forgive Dragon Ball Evolutions or the live action Avatar The Last Airbender for ruining
there you go.
two fantastic animated series.
See, it took someone like Sony to not only live in the Hollywood waters, but also live in the gaming waters to be like, no, Druckmann is in the room and he's not just here for giving you background. No, he's writing this thing. He will write with you guys as partners because he wrote the original story and he has the sense of it. And in so doing, they created a work of art, right? And I think more and more of that is now becoming mainstay because Hollywood is seeing that, hey, these guys aren't just good enough for games. They can actually be in the room. Todd Howard can actually really tell you why Fallout matters and make it beautiful and really make it matter. Before then, that was not allowed. And I think Halo it may be a victim of that. They were a victim of, how many years have they tried to make that thing, right? Eventually it was sit down, let us Hollywood types take this thing over and do for you what you can't do for yourself, which we all see what happened there. It wasn't necessarily the greatest, so
I think
it is what it is.
All of that can be buttoned up with what is the one saying that everyone says about an adaptation is, oh, well, the book was better.
Yeah.
And you always hear the book was better. And it's like, oh.
Yes. Yeah, like, and in this case, the game is better, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have 3 questions, and then I think we'll wrap up the show today. 3 questions left. First off, well, 2 questions and a statement. First, BT Maverick 707 $5 super chat saying what I think we all agree with here. The Nerd Nest podcast with the Fox with Bill, Russ, and Rich is one of my favorite podcasts. I appreciate all you guys' genuine takes. Love gaming and tech. Thank you guys. I think BT Maverick 707 speaks for us all. One of my favorite podcasts, The Nerd Nest. If you have not watched it, you definitely should. I will put the stuff in the show notes when it posts. I watch it religiously. It's a weekly thing. Nice. I love Bill and Rust and Rich and what you guys do there. I think it's excellent, and more people should be watching it because it's genuine, awesome content that us here we really love. So thank you for your super chat. Now 2 very good questions that I want you guys to weigh in on, and then we'll get out of here. First one by Drake Williams. Very interesting question. Predictions for Switch 2 pricing. Carrie, I'll start with you, sir. What is your prediction for the Switch 2 pricing?
So it really depends on whatever node they're using. But at the same token, Nintendo wants to make money on their hardware, and I think Nvidia wants to make money on their hardware now as well. I think everyone wants the price to be $400, but I think that whatever they're saying is like $450 for the base and $500 for the bundle is more likely the reality that we will see.
So you think $400 for the base
is what everyone wants. I think $400 is what everyone's expectations are. Okay. I am anticipating $450 for a base just because I know Nintendo likes making money on their hardware, and I don't think so. The original Switch, going back to it, like the X1, the Tegra chip, you have to understand that Nvidia had no wins. They had 0 wins. They kept on trying to get into mobile from 2010 to 2017. They tried coming in with a chip that people would have on their phone. No one was buying, but Nvidia was still making those chips. So what did Nvidia do with all those lemons? They had to make lemonade. What did we have? The Nvidia Shield. Have you
Yes.
noticed that the
which
NVIDIA
I
Shield?
still own. I love my Shield. Yeah.
No, they don't make any more NVIDIA Shields.
No,
Why?
yeah, they don't.
Because Nintendo bought all of their lemons and they put them into the Switch.
Tegra X1s. Yes.
So
yes,
the
yes.
Switch price that you saw was NVIDIA unloading what they couldn't sell. But now, since the Switch is such a big success, now NVIDIA is like, oh, you want to come for the goods, don't you? Now NVIDIA wants their money. And that's why I think it's going to be 450, 500. That alone. And Nintendo still wants to make their money. So 450, I think, base, 500 for the Mario Kart bundle.
It's a good thought. Good thought. I see where you're going. Chat, you guys can weigh in as well. Switch 2 pricing, $299, $399, $450, or $499. I want your take on there. Please hit that vote. Let your vote be heard. Lucius, what about you? I know we've been talking about it in the DMs in the Discord. And Fox, you should know there are some among our community that have a bet going. Some think that the Switch comes out without a dock and it'll be cheaper. Others think it will be with a dock and it'll certain price. I think you don't get a Switch without a dock day one, but that's just me. And I am with you. 450, 449. That's where I sit. You were gonna say something, Kerry? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was gonna let Lucius speak first, and then I'll chime in.
I will say there's no way day one that you're going to get any SKU without a dock. It's going to have a dock, and it's going. And I think a combination of what the Fox said with NVIDIA wanting their money, Nintendo wanting their money, and apparently the Trump administration also wanting their money as well. With these tariffs, these tariffs are going to cause this thing to be $499, in my opinion. No bundle, just the console itself. $499. Nintendo does not want to put itself in a position where something is $400 or $450 and then having to increase the price later
post tariffs.
Because to the consumer it doesn't matter why you increase your price. You increase your price.
Okay.
So the one thing that I was going to say for the dock, where I feel like this is tinfoil hat territory, total speculation on why the dock would be necessary to be bundled with every Switch sold, is we had this discussion with Russ, and the C button, that button that is an extra button that is now found on the Switch 2. The prevailing guess is that this is to effectively have your Wii U DS type of situation, so you can have so you are broadcasting from your Switch 2 to the dock, and the dock can then output to the TV, but you're still rendering on your Switch 2. So you could effectively have the Wii U situation or a DS simulation situation where you can also just press the C button to swap between those screens at any given time between those two. This is complete speculation, but that is one reason why I think the dock would have to be necessary, because you'd be beaming to the dock itself,
then the dock would project to the TV. Interesting.
While you're still using
so that now you'd have, so it's effectively a Wii U without a Wii U. The dock becomes the way it projects. That's an interesting concept.
Then they can port Nintendo Land and all the other games that didn't quite translate to.
That didn't quite make. Okay, that is that's an interesting hypothesis. We shall wait and see, but I think that might be onto something. That's interesting. Okay. So guys, if you're in the chat, we have 28 votes right now. I want to see more. By and large, it looks like the 399s are winning. I'm on the 450 train, but we shall see. So that's one question. And my second question before we get out of here, and this one I think is also quite pertinent, from the great Slow-Mo Backslap, sounds like people are buying 5090s who have 4090s, and that brings up a question to me, sir. What do you think of the 50 series card? Right? If you are a 40 series card owner, right? Various levels of the series, right? The 70s and the 80s and the supers and the 90s. Do you think a 50 series card is a worthy upgrade? And if it is, for who?
No, I'm not. So I have a 4090 and I was very much interested in going to a 5090, and then the rumors came out to be like 30% better, and I was like, no way you're only doing 30% better. And like, I'm looking at the specs, like 80% more bandwidth. Like, we can definitely overclock this chip some. Like, we have bandwidth to spare. Like, and then when the results came out, it's like, oh yeah, it's 25% better on average. And I'm like, ugh. Like, I play 4K all the time now on my 4090, so That's all I do. So if I'm only going to get 30% better, if I'm going from 50 FPS to 65 FPS, I'm not going to. So I have to sell my 4090, maybe get like 1,400 for it after fees and stuff, and then I have to spend 2,000. So I'm going to lose 300, spend 600. So I'm $900 in for an upgrade that is 30% more. I don't, those numbers don't make sense to me. If it was 50 to 60%, I'd do it. But the numbers for how I have to sell my 4090, what type of fees are involved, the upgrade costs, it's not there for me. The numbers don't make any sense.
And add to what you're saying, because I'm also a 4090 owner, add to what you're saying the fact that later when the dust settles, certain 50 series features will make their way to 40 series cards. So what's even the worth of it? Like, especially if you're a 4080 or above, you're getting certain features that you don't have today.
Yeah, so
you just are.
Yeah, the update to DLSS, not so much the multi-frame gen,
so much in the multi-frame.
Yeah, but you get the benefit of the updated DLSS. Yes, so that's still going to be backported to the 40 series. So so if you have a better upscaler still at that series, ultimately it comes down to I need 60 to 70% better just flat render. If I can't do that, the 4090 for what it was worth has been the first GPU that I felt has been the first actual 4K GPU, like what you can play at 4K for most games. That's been the first GPU that I feel like I can find. Even the 3090, I was like, this is just not enough. I felt it slugging, just being sluggish everywhere, and I always had to like down, go to sub resolutions of 4K. The 4090 has been the first one where I'm comfortably at 4K, and like Wukong or some other games that aren't terribly balanced very well.
A little tough.
Where then I'll have to be in some situation where I have to use the sub resolution and DLSS to get better frame rate. But still, I'm still in a very nice,
comfortable place.
Where the final image quality output is fantastic. So basically, at this point, I'm definitely going to wait until like the 6090, whatever their next generational improvement to their microarchitecture. So that's where I am currently.
Okay. Lucius, how about you, sir? I know you have thoughts on this. I know you tend to not be, you are team red whenever possible, but you also are a user of NVIDIA these days. In your expert opinion, well, you were, yes. Yeah. In your expert opinion, who should be upgrading to a 5090 specifically?
If you have a 3000 series card, so if you have like a 3080 Ti or 3090, I think the 5090 is a pretty big jump. Anything like essentially if you were on that high tier a couple generations ago, I think this is a worthy of a jump because it's just like the 4090 plus, right? So if you don't already have a 4090 and you are already kind of in that space, then I guess it would be good, but it's $2,000, and we saw that the most expensive model is like an Asus model for $2,800, and like that is a high,
and that's today. That's today. I bet you the $2,800 is going to be a dime a dozen.
That's gonna
give it like 6 months.
That's gonna go up. So we're talking about a situation where these graphics cards are going to be $3,000. That is an entire high-end PC.
Either buy a whole PC or just this component. Like what kind of world do we live in right now? It's crazy.
Not even just like a PC, a high-end PC. You can build yourself something that can be a 1440p 4K monster, or get a 5090. Like,
which is a tough pill to swallow, I think,
like that,
for most of us.
If you got it, you got it. I ain't pocket watching, but it's a lot of money.
It is.
What I will, I start questioning where this stuff, because if you have like if you have a 4070, right? Are the promises that they're making of the 5070 and this is just as good as a 4090 and X, Y, and Z? How many people do you think are going to got by those kind of marketing statements and then not get the performance that they're looking for?
I mean, I don't know. I think we know a lot of people who are ready to get got by that, because if rasterization is not your priority and all it is about what I'm getting at the end of the day, you're fine adding the upscaling numbers into the mix in order for it to be the final victorious number, even if that's not real, right? Fake frames are fake frames to us because we know the difference. most people don't see the difference there. So as long as they're getting what they're
as long as their numbers going up, yeah, I guess.
Right?
So
yeah.
I'm okay with fake frames again when we get back to that input latency as the main barrier of whatever is going to be the driver there. I don't think anyone would appreciate going from 10 FPS to 40 FPS, right? Because it would just feel atrocious and look terrible. But you know, if you're at 60 FPS and going to 240, okay, you know, if we're 60 FPS is a barrier for a lot of people in terms of fidelity of type of input. That's fine. And if it realistically looks fine. Like I use FSR 3.1 and then I use XESS as my upscaler. That is a fantastic combo for non-NVIDIA type of things. And I use that on handhelds all the time. So on the Ally X, I'll be playing Ratchet and Clank, where Nixus has done a fantastic job of always including these things. So I like frame gen. I think 2 is like, you know, a doubling of frame rate is like a comfortable area where I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. But once we start getting into the area of like 4 frames, like that's a giant number of frames that you're like inserting in between 2 frames that you have. And at some point you have to say, well, if we're hallucinating like 75% of whatever you're seeing, what's
real and what's fake?
Yeah, like at some point, what am I actually playing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, if it works and it's smooth and great, fine. But the problems, if it can assist with, like, you know, what we talked about, the CRT beam simulation on OLEDs, if that can assist in that space as well, great. Because, you know, if you're blacking out parts of the screen, but you're still having the underlying frames being drawn, then I don't know. I have to use it to like feel it. I'm sure it's fantastic in practice as long as you have like a certain amount of base frame rate that you're going at. So I still like the idea, and I think we're still exploring this territory of like how to make and do this better. But there is a bit of a part in there where there's a conceit that we have to accept that we are rapidly approaching the end of silicon. Even if, you know, FinFET is at its end and we have gate all around and all of the next process tech that's come out after this. So we're comfortably into 2040 territory before we really tap out the end of silicon. But we're approaching it, and we're making these marginal gains up until that point. So it just feels even more drawn out. So the only way to get these are with all these clever solutions to problems. And I'm fine with it in a lot of respects, but I feel like, you know, we're
the quality output needs to be really analyzed over and over and over again to see if we are where we're supposed to be. For those who may not understand the conversation we're having here, for the graybeards in the room, it is the question of how many times do you re-record from that same original cassette tape before the original content becomes so you know what I'm talking about, right? Frames from frames. What does that underlying quality look like once you like duplicated from a duplicate, you know?
Like just like if you translate something from English to another language and
then back,
meaning got lost.
What do you lose? Yes. What do you lose?
That's not exactly what I had said originally.
Exactly.
But it's you know, hopefully we don't miss the forest for the trees, and ultimately what we end up with is just really good stuff. So it's
my wife is in Colombia. Greetings, wife. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Anyway, yes.
So yes. It's an interesting time for sure. I still think that the handheld scene is like an excellent time to be in right now. It took, you know, almost a decade for us to get to this point. And I'm hopeful that next year, like 2026, is going to be the underpinning of where we see the actual next geniness of what we're all anticipating.
Yep, I agree. I think the last super chat of the day, MJ Dark, $5 super chat. He says, imagine thinking a 5070 will beat a 4090. I have a GTX 970 to sell you. Switch games are best on Switch hardware, KS Dante. LOL. Shut up, man.
Man, that split memory on the GTX 970, bro. I remember
was amazing. It was amazing.
Like I remember getting, like, the moment that you would go past 3.5 gigs.
That's it. Yeah.
It would just immediately drop. I'm like, no.
Yeah. I mean, split memory has its place, right? Like not on a GPU, but like when you think about split memory in like Series S or Series X or whatever, right? Like you can define those borders, and as long long as if you had the 970 and said, you know what, I only actually have 3.5 gigs, I don't have 4 gigs, you would never feel that
any issue.
That's how I had to think, essentially.
That's basically how you have to treat it. And as long as you're inside those confines, the split memories aren't so much of a problem, but if you were to try to go past that boundary, you're going to have a bad time.
Indeed, I do recall. Good old days. So I think with that, we can adjourn for the day. Let me close my poll out. The poll was Switch 2 pricing. What was your thoughts? It seems like no one thinks that the Switch 2 will start at $300. No $299 takers. By and large, I think it's split between $399 and $450. I think we're by and large there. And then the 29% of our audience says $500, which I hope you're wrong. That $500 is a little too much.
$399 is hopes and dreams. I don't
think $399 is hopes and dreams?
I want it to be $399 myself. I feel like that is what everyone wants it to be. That's what expectations are.
It's not going to be
the hopes and dreams was they were going to call it the Super Nintendo Switch, and that it was going to be $399.
We can still make that a reality. We can still call it a Super Switch.
But yes, we can. In the world that we live in, it's called the Switch 2, and it's going to be $499.
It is.
That's true. Right. That's right. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think we are at the end of our show. Thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks to the over 300 and some odd people who were watching. Always a pleasure to have you folks here. Carrie, sir, it has been an honor to have you here. Always love your content. I think you do stuff that most people in this environment need and don't have as much of. So I always try to push people to your content. I want more people to catch up with your stuff and watch your stuff because you educate, right? You educate me. You educate a lot of folks. It's the Fox. That's his YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being here, sir. Tell the people what else to expect from you and where they can find all of your ongoings, sir.
So the only video that I have going in the pipeline right now, I'm editing right now, it's on the Strix Point, so HX3070, specifically the models on the GP2 Win Mini, and it is going to be focusing on lower TDP comparisons between SteamOS, Bazzite versus Windows 11 24H2. Rather default settings for both of them, so getting and going, but comparing them and trying to get an idea of the differences that we're seeing. And in the background, I also do have Strix Halo, and I do have some very fascinating info to share there. It goes very low power, far more low power than most people anticipated. So do keep on the lookout for that. I think I am. So I had to recompile some stuff and had a buddy to help me recompile some stuff. So I could actually modify TDP on Strix Halo. So I'm pretty much the only person I think that actually has changed TDP on Halo Strix Point Halo. So I have info that should be exclusive by the time that videos come out. So that is the next one down the line.
Yeah. I hope everybody watching this, all 300 some odd people that are watching this, catch the show. Definitely catch Carrie's stuff. I go and I watch all the time. I learn. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, keep up with the content, because that's how you know when things are coming out. You are part of my daily YouTube grind, sir. I appreciate all the great content you provide, and I'm sure people who are on this channel will also do so. Umbra, I see you in there. I see a lot of people in there. Make sure you subscribe to the Fox. Great resource on YouTube. Lucius, sir, I always appreciate you being here. He and I, we love chopping it up on Discord. Hit the Discord button if you haven't done so already. Join us. Have a great time. We always speak lots of tech and speeds and feeds and other things because our Discord is growing and lots of great conversations. Thank you, good sir, for being with us as you are. And tell people where they cannot find you and where they cannot keep up with you on the internet.
Yeah, don't look for me. The internet is slowly but surely becoming a weirder and weirder place. I really don't like it. So the only place that you will be able to find me is on the GCP Discord, and that is it. Do not look for me. If you happen to find me, I will ignore you. Just know this now.
And this is why we love this man. He's very, very honest and earnest in his pursuits, but he has great information. And you catch us on the Discord. We have always great chats in there. But thank you, Carrie, for being here. Thanks to all the folks who are still in the chat, still rocking with us, all the super chats, all the support. We appreciate you. Hit the like button on the way out if you haven't done so already. And salute to the Everborn Saga, who wasn't able to join us because, of course, he's out there selling his wares at the comic festival in New Jersey. If you happen to have a chance to check him out and let him know that we sent you there. But it's been a great show. Once again, Carrie, thank you so much. Always learn so much when you join us. We appreciate y'all. And for everybody, for myself, for Lucius and Carrie, I say have a good week, and we'll talk to y'all next week. Peace.
Thanks for being on it.